A single father pulls a dying cop from a burning wreck on a deserted highway. But when investigators trace his identity, they uncover a ghost from the military's most elite units and a personal tragedy that connects him to the very criminals she was hunting. What he does next doesn't just shock the police force, it changes everything they thought they knew about courage, sacrifice, and the true meaning of never leaving the fallen behind. This is Jack Rowan's story, and it begins on the darkest night of the year. Before we dive in, drop a comment telling us what city you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories travel across the globe. Now, let's begin. The rain came down like bullets that November night, hammering the asphalt of Highway 47 with such ferocity that the road itself seemed to be disintegrating under nature's assault. It was the kind of storm that made smart people stay home, the kind that transformed familiar roads into treacherous black rivers reflecting nothing but danger. The kind of night when the universe seems to be testing who's brave enough or foolish enough to challenge it. Jack Rowan was neither brave nor foolish. He was simply tired. His hands gripped the steering wheel of his aging Ford F-250 with the casual strength of a man who'd driven through worse. Much worse. The wipers beat a rhythmic pattern across the windshield. Thump, 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 fighting a losing battle against the deluge. In the back seat, secured in her booster seat, 10-year-old Ella dozed fitfully, her small face peaceful in sleep, her stuffed rabbit clutched tight against her chest. They were heading home from her piano recital in the city, running later than Jack had planned. Ella had been the last to perform, her small fingers dancing across the keys in a rendition of Clair de Lune that had made his throat tight with pride and pain. She had her mother's talent, her mother's grace. Sometimes when she played, Jack could almost see Rebecca sitting beside him again, her hand finding his in the darkness of the auditorium. Almost. He blinked hard, forcing the memory away. The road demanded his full attention. Visibility was maybe 30 feet, and that was generous. The truck's headlights carved tunnels through the rain, revealing nothing but more rain, more darkness, more empty highway stretching toward home. That's when he saw it. At first, Jack thought it was a trick of the light, a reflection in the rain-slicked road. But as he drew closer, his combat-trained eyes picked out the details that his civilian life had tried to forget. Tire marks, fresh and violent, scoring the asphalt in a pattern he'd seen too many times in too many places. Someone had lost control. Recently. His foot eased off the gas pedal instinctively, and he felt his body shifting into a different mode, a different version of himself that he'd tried to leave behind 6 years ago. The guardrail was torn open like tissue paper, metal twisted back on itself in jagged teeth. Beyond it, the forest dropped away into darkness. And through that darkness, barely visible through the rain and trees, was a faint glow, the wrong kind of glow, the color of electrical fires and leaking fuel. Jack's heart, which had maintained a steady rhythm through firefights and ambushes and situations that would have broken other men, suddenly kicked into a higher gear. His hands were already turning the wheel, pulling the truck onto the shoulder before his conscious mind had fully processed what he was doing. "Daddy?" Ella's sleepy voice came from the back seat. "Stay here, sweetheart," Jack said, his voice automatically gentle despite the adrenaline beginning to flood his system. "Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone but me. Understand?" "What's wrong?" She was more awake now, sitting up, her rabbit falling to the floor. "Probably nothing. Just stay put. I'll be right back." He reached back and squeezed her hand, feeling the small fingers wrap around his. So small, so trusting. For a moment he hesitated. He had Ella to think about. She was everything now, the only thing. But someone might be dying down that embankment. Someone might have minutes, seconds. Some instincts couldn't be unlearned. Jack grabbed the heavy flashlight from under his seat, military grade, solid enough to be a weapon, and stepped out into the storm. The rain hit him like a physical force, instantly soaking through his flannel shirt and jeans. The temperature had dropped with the storm, and he could see his breath mixing with the rain. He moved to the torn guardrail and shone the flashlight down the slope. The beam caught metal, glass, something dark and wrong. About 40 feet down, wedged between two massive pines, was a vehicle. A patrol car. The distinctive black and white was barely visible under the damage, but the light bar on top, though shattered, was unmistakable. Smoke was rising from the hood, mixing with the rain. Jack had seen enough vehicle fires to know what came next. He had minutes, maybe less. He didn't think. Thinking was the enemy of action, and action was what saved lives. His body was already moving, boots finding purchase on the muddy slope, flashlight gripped in one hand while the other caught at trees and rocks to control his descent. The rain made everything slippery, treacherous. Twice he nearly lost his footing, but muscle memory from 100 combat scenarios kept him moving, kept him balanced. As he got closer, he could see the extent of the damage. The patrol car had rolled at least once, maybe twice, before the trees had stopped it. The driver's side was crushed inward, metal folded like paper. The windshield was a spiderweb of cracks, and steam or smoke, Jack couldn't tell which, was hissing from under the crumpled hood. He reached the vehicle and moved to the driver's side, shining the flashlight through the broken window. What he saw made his combat medic training snap into focus with crystal clarity. A woman, mid-30s, police uniform, blonde hair matted with blood. She was pinned by the crushed door, her head tilted at an angle that would have been fatal if it were any worse. Blood was running from a gash on her forehead, more blood darkening her uniform shirt on the left side. Her eyes were closed, face pale as death. For a fraction of a second, Jack saw someone else in that seat. Dark hair instead of blonde. The same uniform. The same blood. Rebecca. He shook his head violently, forcing the memory away. This wasn't Rebecca. This was now. This was someone he could still save. "Officer," he called out, his voice cutting through the rain. "Can you hear me?" Nothing. Jack tried the door. It didn't budge, crushed shut by the impact. He moved around the front of the car, noting the smoke getting thicker, the smell of gasoline sharp in the wet air. The passenger side was less damaged. He tried that door. Locked. "Come on," he muttered, looking around. His eyes fell on a rock, baseball-sized, perfect. He grabbed it, turned his face away, and smashed the passenger window. Glass exploded inward. He reached through, unlocked the door, and pulled it open. The smell of blood and gasoline hit him harder without the window in the way. He climbed in, glass crunching under his boots, and moved to the woman's side. Up close, he could see she was breathing. Shallow, irregular breaths that meant shock, trauma. Not much time. "Officer," he said again, closer now, his fingers moving to her neck to check her pulse. It was there, thready and weak, but there. "My name is Jack. I'm going to get you out of here." Her eyes fluttered open. They were blue, he noticed. Clear blue despite the blood and the rain and the darkness. They focused on him with surprising intensity. "Who?" Her voice was barely a whisper, weak but conscious. Conscious was good. Conscious meant fighting. "Nobody important, but I'm going to help you. Can you tell me your name?" "Sarah. Officer Sarah Miles." Each word seemed to cost her. "Badge, 2247. "Okay, Sarah. I need you to stay with me. Can you do that?" She tried to nod, winced. "Hurts." "I know. I'm going to check you over, see what we're working with." His hands were already moving, trained fingers assessing damage with practiced efficiency. Head wound, superficial, looked worse than it was. Left side, that was the problem. Her uniform shirt was soaked with blood, and when he carefully pulled it aside, he saw the jagged piece of metal protruding from just below her ribs. Part of the door, driven inward by the impact. It had pierced clean through. Jack's jaw tightened. This was bad. The metal was acting as a plug right now, but if it shifted, if it came out, she'd bleed out in minutes. But leaving it in meant she was trapped, and the smoke was getting thicker. "Sarah, I need you to listen to me very carefully. You're impaled. Do you understand what that means?" Those blue eyes found his again, and he saw the understanding there. She knew. "Can't move me. I'm going to have to. That car could go up any second, but I'm trained. I know what I'm doing. Do you trust me?" It was an absurd question. She didn't know him, had no reason to trust him. But she must have seen something in his eyes. Or maybe she just knew she had no choice, because she gave the smallest nod. "Back up?" Jack asked, though he already knew the answer. He'd seen no other cars on that highway, heard no sirens. "Called it in before I—" She coughed, and blood flecked her lips. "Bastards ran me off the road. They're still out there." Jack's eyes narrowed. Who did this to you? Cartel? Operation. I was tracking them. They knew. Her eyes started to flutter closed. No, stay with me, Sarah. Stay with me. He tapped her cheek gently. Her eyes opened again. You said you called for backup. When? 20 minutes. Maybe more. They're not coming fast enough. Her hand suddenly grabbed his arm with surprising strength. They wanted me dead. You need to get out of here. Not without you. Jack was already assessing the situation, his mind running through options with the cold calculation that had kept him alive through 2 tours in Afghanistan and 1 in Iraq. The metal shard was maybe 3 inches wide, curved like a hook. It was through her side, probably missed the kidney but might have clipped the liver. Moving her would be agony. Removing the metal would likely kill her, but staying here would definitely kill her. The smoke was definitely thicker now, and underneath the rain Jack heard a new sound, a soft whooshing that meant fire, feeding on gasoline fumes. They had 2 minutes, maybe 3. He looked at Sarah. This is going to hurt, badly. You might pass out. That's actually better. But I need you to know I'm not leaving you here. Whatever happens, I'm getting you out, okay? She nodded, and he saw her steeling herself. Cop courage. He'd seen it before, in Rebecca. That thing inside good cops that wouldn't quit, wouldn't surrender, no matter how bad things got. Jack moved with swift precision. From his back pocket, he pulled out a multi-tool. A good one, military issue that he'd carried for 15 years. He also grabbed the small first aid kit he always kept in his truck, had run back up the slope to get it while talking to Sarah, moving on autopilot. I'm going to cut your shirt away, get a better look. Then I'm going to stabilize that metal as best I can. You with me? Do it! He cut the uniform shirt away, revealing the wound in full. It was worse than he'd thought. The metal had gone in at an angle, and there was already significant bleeding around the entry point. He had to stabilize it before moving her, or the jostling would tear her open from the inside. Working quickly, Jack used gauze from the first aid kit, packing it around the metal shard, creating a buffer. Then he took his belt off. Good leather, strong, and carefully wound it around her torso, under her arms, securing the metal in place. It wasn't perfect, wouldn't hold for long, but it might give her a chance. Sarah was breathing hard, each breath a struggle. You're military. Was. He didn't elaborate. Okay, here's the hard part. I need to get you out of this seat. The door's crushed, so we're going out the passenger side. I'm going to support you, keep that metal as stable as possible, but it's going to move. You're going to feel it. I need you to not fight me, no matter how bad it gets. Can you do that? No choice. That's the spirit. He almost smiled. Almost. On 3. 1, 2. He didn't say 3. Old combat trick. People tensed up on 3, made things harder. Instead, on 2, he moved, one arm sliding under her shoulders, the other supporting her lower back, lifting her as gently as combat speed allowed. Sarah screamed. It was a raw, primal sound that cut through the rain and the storm. Her body went rigid with pain, and Jack felt her consciousness wavering. He kept moving, pulling her across the center console, easing her through the passenger door. The smoke was thick now, black and oily. He could feel heat from the front of the car. They were out of time. With Sarah half conscious in his arms, Jack started back up the slope. She was a solid weight, maybe 140, most of it muscle, but he'd carried wounded soldiers through worse terrain under enemy fire. This was just a muddy slope in the rain. He'd done this 100 times, except those soldiers hadn't been bleeding from their sides, hadn't been dying in his arms. Halfway up the slope, he heard it, a soft whump that he knew too well. The fire had found something it liked, something that burned hot and fast. He didn't look back, just kept moving, boots digging into mud, free hand grabbing at trees Sarah held tight against his chest. Stay with me, he said, as much to himself as to her. Almost there. Just stay with me. Sarah's eyes were closed now, her breathing shallow. Blood was seeping through the makeshift bandage, soaking into his shirt. He could feel her life slipping away with each drop, could feel the clock ticking down. 15 feet from the top, the patrol car exploded. The sound was enormous, a violent crack that echoed through the forest. Heat washed over them, and the world lit up orange and red. The pressure wave hit Jack in the back, nearly knocked him forward. He grabbed a tree with his free hand, held on, sheltered Sarah's body with his own. Debris rained down around them, metal, glass, burning pieces of tire. Something hit Jack's shoulder, sharp and hot. He ignored it. Kept moving. Almost there. His truck appeared through the rain, headlights still on. Ella's face pressed against the back window, eyes wide with terror. Jack reached level ground, stumbled to the truck, and carefully laid Sarah on the ground beside the rear door. He yanked the door open. "Ella, I need you to climb into the front seat, right now. Quick, sweetheart." "Daddy, you're bleeding." "I know. Front seat, now." She scrambled forward, clutching her rabbit. Jack lifted Sarah as gently as he could, placed her across the back seat. She was completely unconscious now, face gray in the dome light. He pressed his hand against the wound, applying pressure. So much blood. Too much blood. He grabbed his phone, dialed 911 with blood-slick fingers. 911, what's your emergency? This is Jack Rowan. I'm on Highway 47, about mile marker 34. I have a critically injured police officer, female, mid-30s. Impalement wound to the left side, significant blood loss, shock, possible internal injuries. She needs immediate medevac. Sir, what's your... I'm a former Army combat medic. She called for backup 20 minutes ago, but it's not here yet. Her patrol car just exploded. She has minutes, maybe less. You need to get a helicopter in the air now. The dispatcher's tone changed, became sharper, more focused. Stay on the line, sir. I'm routing this to emergency services. Can you tell me the officer's name? Officer Sarah Miles, badge 2247. She said she was rammed off the road by cartel members. A pause. Sir, maintain pressure on the wound. Help is en route. Helicopter is 7 minutes out. Is the scene secure? Jack looked around at the darkness, the rain, the burning wreckage below. Somewhere out there, the people who'd run Sarah off the road might still be watching. Scene is not secure. But we're not moving her again. She wouldn't survive it. Understood. Stay with her. That's the plan. Jack set the phone down, kept pressure on Sarah's wound. With his free hand, he reached forward and squeezed Ella's shoulder. She turned to look at him, and in the dim light, he saw tears on her face. It's okay, baby. She's going to be okay. You promise? Jack looked down at Sarah's pale face, at the blood still flowing despite the pressure. He thought of all the soldiers he'd tried to save, the ones who'd made it and the ones who hadn't. He thought of Rebecca, bleeding out in an alley while he'd been overseas, unable to save her. I promise I'm going to do everything I can. The minutes crawled by like hours. Jack maintained pressure, monitored Sarah's breathing, kept checking her pulse. Weak, but still there. Still fighting. Come on, Sarah, he murmured. Don't quit on me now. You're tougher than this. I've seen you cops. You're all tougher than this. Stay with me. Ella was crying softly in the front seat. Is she going to die like Mommy? The question hit Jack like a physical blow. No, sweetheart. I'm not going to let that happen. You couldn't save Mommy. I wasn't there for Mommy. But I'm here now. I'm here. In the distance, finally, he heard it. Sirens, multiple vehicles approaching fast. Then another sound. The distinctive whump, whump, whump of helicopter rotors cutting through the storm. Lights appeared on the highway, red and blue, painting the rain in colors of emergency. 3 patrol cars, an ambulance, all screeching to a halt behind Jack's truck. Officers poured out, hands on weapons until they saw Jack kneeling beside Sarah, covered in blood. Federal agent, one of them shouted, step away from the officer. I'm the one who called 911, Jack said, not moving, maintaining pressure. She's got an impalement wound, left side, significant blood loss. I've stabilized the metal, but it needs to come out in surgery. She's B negative if you need blood. How do you know it? Because I'm a combat medic, and I know my blood types. Get your paramedics over here now. She's running out of time. The officer must have recognized command voice when he heard it, because he immediately waved the ambulance forward. 2 paramedics jumped out, running toward them with equipment. The helicopter was overhead now, searchlight cutting through the rain, looking for a place to land. The paramedics reached Sarah, and Jack smoothly handed over to them, backing away to give them room. Impalement wound, lower left quadrant, he reported, slipping into medical shorthand. Metal stabilized with packing and compression. BP was 90/60 10 minutes ago. Pulse is 120, thready. Breathing shallow, possible pneumothorax on the left. She's been unconscious for approximately 8 minutes. Lost consciousness due to shock and pain, not head trauma. Head wound is superficial. No neck or spine injuries that I could determine. The lead paramedic looked up at him. You a doctor? Medic, Army, long time ago. Well, you saved her life. This stabilization work is textbook. Maybe better than textbook. He was already starting an IV line, pushing fluids. She should be dead. She's not dead yet. Let's keep it that way. The helicopter found a clearing about 50 yards up the road and set down. The paramedics loaded Sarah onto a stretcher, moving with practiced efficiency. As they carried her past, her eyes flickered open for just a moment. They found Jack through the rain and the chaos. Thank you, she mouthed, no sound. Then she was gone, loaded into the helicopter, lifting off into the storm with a roar of rotors and wind. Jack stood there in the rain, covered in blood, Sarah's blood, and watched the helicopter disappear into the darkness. Around him, the police were securing the scene, talking into radios, taking photos of the destroyed guardrail and the burning wreckage below. A tall man in a sergeant's uniform approached him, older, weathered face, eyes that had seen too much. Sir, I'm Sergeant Tom Bradley. I need to ask you some questions. Okay. First, thank you. That officer, Sarah, she's one of ours. One of the good ones. You saved her life. Maybe. No, maybe about it. I've been doing this 30 years. I've seen what happens to people trapped in burning cars. Bradley pulled out a notebook. Can you tell me what happened? Jack ran through it, quick and factual. Saw the damage. Went down. Found Sarah. Got her out. Car exploded. End of story. Bradley was writing, but his eyes kept flicking up to Jack's face. You said you're a combat medic? Was. Army. Discharged 6 years ago. Name? For a moment, Jack considered lying, giving a fake name, disappearing into the night. It was habit, the old instincts telling him to stay off the radar, stay unknown. But Ella was in the truck, and these were cops, and he'd just saved one of their own. Lying now would only complicate things. Jack Rowan. Bradley's pen stopped moving. His eyes went sharp. Jack Rowan, former Army. You live around here? About 40 miles north, small place called Cedar Ridge. Huh. Bradley was looking at him differently now. You wouldn't happen to be the same Jack Rowan who did 2 tours in Afghanistan and 1 in Iraq? Special Forces? Silver Star recipient? Jack's jaw tightened. How do you... Your wife was one of ours, Officer Rebecca Rowan. Killed in the line 6 years ago. Bradley's voice had gone soft. I was at her funeral. I remember you. You've changed. More gray, more weight. But I remember your face. Jack said nothing. What was there to say? She was investigating a cartel operation when she was killed, Bradley continued. Never got the guys who did it. Case is still open. He paused. Sarah was working that same case. That's why they tried to kill her tonight. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. I'm sorry, Bradley said finally. I'm sure this brings up... I need to get my daughter home, Jack interrupted. She's been through enough tonight. Are we done here? Bradley studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Yeah, we're done. But the captain's going to want to talk to you. Probably the FBI, too, given what Sarah was investigating. You okay with that? Do I have a choice? Not really, but I can make sure they come to you instead of dragging you downtown. Small courtesy for saving one of our own. Fine. Jack turned to go, but Bradley's voice stopped him. Mr. Rowan? One more thing. Those stitches you put in, that stabilization work, that's not just medic training. That's trauma surgery level. Where'd you learn to work like that? Jack looked back at him, rain streaming down his face. The kind of places that teach you through repetition. The kind where if you don't learn fast, your friends die. He walked back to his truck, climbed in beside Ella. She immediately crawled across the center console and wrapped her arms around him, not caring about the blood. Is she going to be okay, Daddy? I don't know, baby. I hope so. You were so brave. No, just trained. He started the engine, began to pull away from the scene. In the rearview mirror, he could see Bradley still standing in the rain, watching them go. They drove in silence for a while, the storm finally beginning to ease. Ella eventually spoke up, her voice small. "Daddy, that lady, she looked like Mommy, in the uniform." Jack's hands tightened on the wheel. "I know. Is that why you saved her? Because she looked like Mommy?" He thought about that. Thought about the moment he'd seen Sarah in that crushed car, the flash of dark hair that had become blonde, the uniform that had carried him back 6 years to the worst night of his life. "No," he said finally. "I saved her because it was the right thing to do, because she needed help and I could give it, because that's what we do. We help people when they need it. Like Mommy used to do." "Yeah, like Mommy used to do." They reached home 20 minutes later, a small house at the end of a gravel road surrounded by pine trees, deliberately isolated from the world. Jack had bought it after Rebecca's death, needing distance from the city, from the memories, from the life they'd planned together. He carried Ella inside, got her into pajamas, tucked her into bed with her rabbit. She held on to his hand. "Daddy, are you going to have nightmares tonight?" The question surprised him. He thought he'd hidden it better, the way the past sometimes came back in the dark hours, the faces of the ones he couldn't save. "Maybe, but I'll be okay. You can come get me if you need to, like I get you." He kissed her forehead. "Thanks, sweetheart. I love you." "Love you too, Daddy." He stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her drift off to sleep, so small and innocent and trusting. She was why he'd left the service, why he'd walked away from everything he'd known. She was worth more than all of it. In the bathroom, Jack finally looked at himself in the mirror. Blood, mostly dried now, covered his shirt, his hands, streaked across his face. His shoulder, where the debris had hit him, was bruised and cut, but nothing serious. He'd had worse, much worse. He stripped off his clothes, threw them in the trash, they were beyond saving, and stood under the shower, letting the hot water wash away the blood. It swirled down the drain, pink and then clear, but he could still feel it on his hands. Could still feel Sarah's life pulsing out between his fingers. She should be dead. By every metric, every calculation, she should have bled out before the helicopter arrived. The fact that she was even alive to load into that bird was a minor miracle. Or good medicine. Or both. Jack dried off, put on clean clothes, and walked to his home office. It was supposed to be a spare bedroom, but he'd never used it for that. Instead, it held his desk, his computer, and on the walls, his past. Medals in frames, commendations, photos of his unit, men and women who'd served with him, some still alive, some not. And there, in the place of honor above his desk, Rebecca's photo from her academy graduation. Beautiful, strong, smiling like she could take on the world. She'd taken on the world and lost. Jack sat at his desk, turned on the computer and pulled up the local news. Nothing yet about the crash, too recent. But he found Sarah's name in the department directory. Officer Sarah Miles, decorated for valor twice, 13 years on the force, specialization in organized crime, just like Rebecca had been. He pulled up Rebecca's old case files, the ones he'd kept, the ones the department had officially closed but he'd never let go. Cartel operation, drugs, and weapons flowing through the state. Rebecca had been investigating a specific cell, had gotten close to identifying the leaders. Too close. They'd ambushed her responding to a fake call, shot her 3 times, and left her to die in an alley. Jack had been in Iraq when it happened. He'd gotten the call from Bradley, had gotten emergency leave, had made it home just in time for the funeral. By then, Ella was already with Rebecca's parents, already traumatized, already changed. He'd taken her back, had tried to piece together a life from the wreckage. But he'd been different too. Haunted. Angry. He'd wanted to hunt down the men who'd killed Rebecca, wanted to use every skill the army had taught him to make them pay. But he'd had Ella to think about, so instead, he'd walked away. Moved to Cedar Ridge, tried to forget. Now this. Sarah investigating the same case, run off the road by the same cartel. History repeating itself like a bad dream. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered it. "Mr. Rowan, this is Captain Marcus Stone from the State Police. I'm calling about Officer Miles." Jack leaned back in his chair. How is she? Alive, thanks to you. She's in surgery now, but the doctors say she should make it. They were impressed by the field work, said whoever stabilized her knew exactly what they were doing. I'm glad she's okay. Mr. Rowan, I need to meet with you, not just about tonight, about what Officer Miles was investigating. I've been looking into your background and, well, I think we need to talk in person. Captain, I saved a cop's life. That doesn't make me part of your investigation. No, but your wife was killed by the same people who tried to kill Officer Miles. That makes you connected whether you like it or not. Jack closed his eyes. I have a daughter to think about. I understand, and I respect that. But these people, they don't stop. They'll keep coming. And the next cop they try to kill might not be lucky enough to have someone like you around to save them. Stone paused. I'm not asking you to put on a uniform. I'm asking you to help us finish what your wife started. Don't you want that? Did he? Jack looked up at Rebecca's photo, at her smile, at the life and light in her eyes that had been extinguished by men who dealt in death. I'll think about it, he said finally. That's all I ask. I'll call you tomorrow. Thank you again, Mr. Rowan. You did good work tonight. The line went dead. Jack sat there in the darkness, staring at Rebecca's picture, thinking about Sarah bleeding out in his arms, thinking about Ella asleep down the hall, thinking about the life he'd tried to build away from all of this. But some things, he was beginning to realize, you couldn't just walk away from. Some debts demanded payment. Some battles weren't finished just because you wanted them to be. He stood up, walked to Ella's room, and looked in on her. Still sleeping, peaceful, and safe. That was what mattered, keeping her that way. Whatever Captain Stone wanted, whatever happened next, that was the bottom line. Ella's safety, her future, her chance at a life that wasn't marked by violence and loss. But as Jack returned to his office and stared at the blank screen of his computer, he couldn't shake the image of Sarah's blue eyes looking up at him through the rain, couldn't forget the feeling of her life balanced in his hands, couldn't ignore the voice in the back of his head that sounded suspiciously like Rebecca, asking him if he was really going to let her killers win. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving only the steady drip of water from the eaves and the occasional rumble of distant thunder. The world was dark and quiet and still. But Jack Rowan, former Special Forces combat medic, widower, father, and reluctant hero, knew that the storm was just beginning. The call came 3 days later, just as Jack was walking Ella to the school bus stop. His phone vibrated in his pocket, and when he pulled it out, he saw Captain Marcus Stone's name on the screen. He'd been expecting it, dreading it, knowing it was coming, but hoping somehow it wouldn't. Mr. Rowan, it's Captain Stone. I hope I'm not calling too early. Jack watched Ella climb onto the bus, her backpack nearly as big as she was. She turned and waved at him through the window, and he waved back, forcing a smile. It's fine. What can I do for you, Captain? Officer Miles is out of surgery and stable. She's asking to see you. Would you be willing to come to the hospital? Jack felt something tighten in his chest. He'd been trying not to think about Sarah, trying to push that night back into the dark corners where he kept all the other things he didn't want to remember. Captain, I'm glad she's okay, but I don't see what good... She remembers everything, Mr. Rowan, every detail. She wants to thank you personally. Stone paused. And I need to talk to you about something else. Something important. Please, 1 hour of your time. Jack looked up the empty road where the bus had disappeared, carrying Ella to school, to safety, to a normal life. Then he looked down at his hands, the same hands that had held Sarah's life 3 nights ago. Where and when? County General, room 407? Noon work for you? I'll be there. The drive to County General took 45 minutes through winding mountain roads that were still wet from recent storms. Jack spent the time trying to prepare himself, trying to figure out what he'd say to Sarah, what he'd say to Stone. But every scenario he ran through his head felt wrong, inadequate. The truth was, he didn't want to be involved, didn't want to be pulled back into that world of violence and investigation and hunting bad men. He'd done his time, paid his dues, lost enough. But he also couldn't forget the weight of Sarah in his arms, the desperate urgency of keeping her alive, the feeling, for the first time in 6 years, that he was doing what he was meant to do. The hospital was a sprawling complex of gray buildings that smelled like antiseptic and cafeteria food. Jack made his way through the maze of corridors to the fourth floor, found room 407, and stopped outside the door. Through the small window, he could see Sarah propped up in bed, her blonde hair clean now, no longer matted with blood. She was pale, with dark circles under her eyes, but she was awake and alert. Captain Stone stood beside her bed. A tall man in his late 50s, gray hair cut military short, the kind of presence that commanded respect without asking for it. Jack knocked softly and pushed the door open. Sarah's head turned toward him, and her face lit up with recognition and something deeper, gratitude mixed with wonder. "You're real," she said, her voice still weak but clear. "Part of me thought I had dreamed you." "I'm real." Jack stepped into the room, suddenly uncomfortable with the intensity of her gaze. "How are you feeling?" "Like someone shoved a piece of metal through my side and then dragged me up a mountain in a thunderstorm." She smiled slightly. "But alive. Very, very alive." Captain Stone extended his hand. "Mr. Rowan, Marcus Stone, thank you for coming." Jack shook it, noting the firm grip, the calluses that spoke of time on the range. This was a man who still got his hands dirty. "The doctors told me about the work you did," Stone continued. "They said the stabilization was perfect. Textbook trauma medicine. One of them asked if you'd been a surgeon. Combat medic, special forces. You learn fast or people die." "You learned well." Stone gestured to a chair. "Please sit. We have a lot to discuss." Jack sat, his eyes moving between Stone and Sarah. "Before we get into whatever this is, I need to know, are you safe here? The people who ran you off the road, do they know where you are?" Sarah's expression hardened. "They think I'm dead. Or at least, that's what we're letting them think. As far as the public knows, Officer Sarah Miles died in that crash. Her funeral is scheduled for next week." Jack's eyebrows rose. "You're going underground." "Witness protection, sort of," Stone said. "We've been building a case against the Vega cartel for 3 years. Sarah was our lead investigator. When they tried to kill her, we realized they're more worried than we thought, which means we're close." "The Vega cartel." Jack's voice went flat. "They're the ones who killed my wife." "Yes." Stone pulled a file from his briefcase, set it on the table between them. "Rebecca Rowan was investigating their distribution network when she was murdered. The case went cold after she died. We lost our best lead, our best investigator. But Sarah picked it up 2 years ago. She's made progress Rebecca couldn't have imagined." Sarah leaned forward slightly, wincing with the movement. "Your wife was brilliant, Mr. Rowan. The groundwork she laid, the contacts she developed, the patterns she identified, I've been building on that foundation. She was so close to breaking it open." "Too close," Jack said quietly. "That's why they killed her." "Yes." Sarah's voice was gentle. "I'm sorry. I know this must be—" "Why am I here?" Jack interrupted, not unkindly, but needing to cut through the sympathy. He'd had enough sympathy 6 years ago to last a lifetime. "You said you wanted to thank me, but this feels like more than a thank you." Stone and Sarah exchanged a glance. Then Stone opened the file, pulled out several photographs, and laid them on the table. Crime scenes, bodies, evidence markers, the visual language of violent death that Jack knew too well. The Vega cartel is run by 3 brothers, Miguel, Carlos, and Rafael Vega. They're responsible for at least 40 deaths in this state alone, probably twice that many we can't prove. They move cocaine, heroin, and methamphetamine through a network that spans from Mexico to Canada. They're careful, smart, and absolutely ruthless. Stone tapped one of the photos. This was a state trooper who got too close. This was an FBI informant. This was a district attorney who tried to prosecute one of their dealers. Jack looked at the photos without flinching. He'd seen worse in combat zones. "What does this have to do with me?" "We have a plan to take them down," Sarah said. "A good plan, one that could work. But we need help. Specific help. The kind only someone with your skills can provide." "I'm not a cop. I'm not a soldier anymore. I'm a father who works construction and wants to be left alone." "We know." Stone's voice was firm, but not unkind. "And we're not asking you to go back into combat. We're not asking you to do anything that would put your daughter at risk. But you have skills, training, that our people don't have. Combat medicine at the highest level, tactical experience, the ability to make life or death decisions under pressure. You have SWAT teams for that. Our SWAT teams are good, Stone acknowledged, but they're not special forces. They haven't operated in war zones, and most importantly, they haven't seen what you've seen. He pulled out another photo, this one of a young officer in uniform. This is Officer Danny Reeves, 26 years old. He was on a raid 6 months ago, and when his partner went down with a gunshot wound, Danny froze. His partner died because Danny didn't know how to stop the bleeding, didn't know what to do. It destroyed him. He's still on desk duty, seeing a therapist. While Jack looked at the photo, saw the youth in Reeves' face, the idealism that hadn't yet been beaten out by reality. He thought about all the young soldiers he'd trained, all the ones who'd needed to know how to save a life under fire. You want me to train your people? Yes. Stone leaned forward. Not just SWAT. Every officer who might face combat situations. Teach them what you know. Combat medicine, triage under fire, how to keep someone alive when the ambulance is 10 minutes out and they have 2 minutes to live. Sarah spoke up, her voice gaining strength. After what you did for me, the whole department is talking. They're asking who you are, how you learned to work like that. They want to know what you know, Jack. They want to be able to save their partners the way you saved me. Jack was quiet for a long moment, processing. It made sense in a way. It was a use for his skills that didn't require him to carry a gun or kick down doors. He could teach, could pass on what he'd learned in blood and fire, and maybe, some kid like Danny Reeves wouldn't have to watch his partner die because he didn't know what to do. But there was more here. He could sense it in the way Stone was watching him, in the careful way Sarah was choosing her words. What else? He asked. This is more than training. What aren't you telling me? Stone sat back and a slight smile crossed his face. You're as sharp as your file says you are. He pulled out another document. The truth is, we're planning a major operation against the Vega cartel. Multiple simultaneous raids across 3 states. It's big, complex, and dangerous. We're going to hit their distribution centers, their safe houses, their financial operations, everything at once, so they can't shift resources or warn each other. And we need it to go perfectly. One mistake, one officer down, one piece of bad timing, and the whole operation falls apart. These aren't street dealers we're hitting. These are military-trained cartel enforcers. Some of them are former Mexican special forces. They're armed with military-grade weapons, and they will not hesitate to kill cops. Jack understood now. You want me there. On the raids. Not on the raids, Stone corrected. In tactical support, planning, medical oversight. You'd be in the command center coordinating, making sure our people have the best possible chance of coming home alive. And if something goes wrong, if someone goes down, you'd be there to walk our medics through it. That's not what you really want, Jack said, his voice hard. You want me in the field. You want me on those raids. That's why you brought up my special forces background, my tactical experience. You don't need a medic in a command center, you need a soldier. Stone didn't deny it. I won't lie to you, Mr. Rowan. Having you on site in the field would increase our success rate significantly. But I also won't force you into something you're not willing to do. If you're only comfortable training and support, that's what we'll use you for. But I want you to think about something. He pulled out one more photo, and Jack's breath caught. It was Rebecca. Not her academy photo, but a crime scene photo, lying in that alley, blood pooling around her, eyes open and empty. These are the people who did this to your wife, Stone said quietly. These are the people who orphaned your daughter, and they're still out there, still hurting people, still killing cops. Sarah was almost number 41. He met Jack's eyes. I know you walked away from this life. I know you have every right to keep walking, but I also know that 6 years ago, you would have given anything to be able to stop the men who killed Rebecca. I'm giving you that chance now. The room fell silent. Jack stared at the photo, at Rebecca's face frozen in death, and felt the old anger rising up, hot and sharp and familiar. He'd buried it deep, had tried to let it go, had told himself that revenge wouldn't bring her back, wouldn't change anything. But looking at that photo now, he realized he'd been lying to himself. He'd never let it go. He'd just locked it away. And now Stone was handing him the key. I have a daughter, Jack said, his voice barely above a whisper. She's already lost her mother. I can't risk her losing her father too. I understand. Stone gathered the photos, put them back in the file. That's why this is entirely your choice. No pressure, no guilt. Just an opportunity to use your skills to help people and maybe get some closure on your wife's murder. Sarah shifted in her bed, drawing Jack's attention. For what it's worth, I think you should do it. Not because of revenge, not even because of your wife, but because you're good at this. Saving lives. Teaching others to save lives. The world needs more people like you, Jack. The department needs more people like you. What you did that night, she continued, in the rain, in the dark, with a car about to explode, that wasn't just training. That was instinct. That was someone who's done it so many times, it's part of who they are. You can walk away from the military, you can change jobs, you can move to the middle of nowhere, but you can't walk away from who you are. And you, Jack Rowan, are someone who saves people. Her words hit harder than Stone's photos, harder than the memories of Rebecca. Because Sarah was right. In that moment on the highway, he hadn't thought about Ella or his new life or staying safe. He'd just acted, had fallen back into being the person he'd been trained to be. And it had felt right. Natural. Like coming home after a long exile. I need to think about it, Jack said finally. This isn't a decision I can make in a hospital room. Of course. Stone handed him a card. Take all the time you need. But Jack, the operation is scheduled for 3 weeks from now. If you're going to help, we need to know soon so we can integrate you into the planning. Jack took the card, stood up. He looked at Sarah, really looked at her. I'm glad you're okay, truly. Thank you for saving my life. She held his gaze. I mean that. Thank you for not driving past. Thank you for risking yourself to help a stranger. Thank you for being the kind of person who still cares enough to stop. He nodded, not trusting himself to speak, and left the room. The drive home was a blur. Jack's mind was spinning, processing everything Stone had said, everything Sarah had implied, everything that photo of Rebecca had stirred up inside him. By the time he pulled into his driveway, he still hadn't come to a decision. Ella wouldn't be home from school for another 2 hours. The house was quiet, empty, just Jack and his thoughts. He went to his office, sat at his desk, and pulled up the old files again. Rebecca's investigation, the Vega cartel, all the dead ends and false leads that had gone nowhere after she died. His phone rang. Not Stone this time, but a number he didn't recognize. He answered warily. Jack Rowan. Who's asking? My name is Detective Danny Reeves. Captain Stone gave me your number. I hope that's okay. The young officer from the photo. Jack leaned back in his chair. What can I do for you, Detective? I heard what you did for Officer Miles, and the captain told me, about your background. Your training. Reeves's voice was uncertain, younger than his years. I know this is going to sound weird, but I wanted to talk to you about something, about what happened to my partner. Captain Stone told me. I'm sorry for your loss. Yeah, thanks. A pause. The thing is, it didn't have to happen. Martinez, my partner, he got shot in the femoral artery. I tried to stop the bleeding, but I didn't know how. I didn't know where to put pressure, didn't know how to use the tourniquet right. By the time the paramedics got there, he'd bled out. Another pause, longer this time. I wake up every night seeing his face, hearing him tell me it was going to be okay while I watched him die. Jack closed his eyes. He knew that particular nightmare intimately. It wasn't your fault, Reeves. You did what you could. But I could have done more. If I'd known what you know, if I'd had the training you have, Martinez would still be alive. He had a wife, Jack, 2 kids. They're without a father because I didn't know how to tie a fucking tourniquet properly. The raw pain in Reeves's voice was hard to hear. Jack had counseled enough young soldiers through survivor's guilt to recognize it. You can't blame yourself for not knowing something you were never taught. That's exactly it, though. We should be taught. Every cop who might face a violent situation should know combat medicine, should know how to keep someone alive under fire. But we don't. We get basic first aid training, and then we're expected to figure it out when someone's bleeding to death in front of us. Reeves's voice grew stronger. Captain Stone said you might train us, teach us what you know. Is that true? He asked. I haven't decided yet. Please. The word came out desperate. Please, Jack, I can't bring Martinez back, but maybe I can make sure no other cop has to watch their partner die because they didn't know what to do. Maybe you can teach us so we can save the next person. Isn't that worth something? Jack thought about all the soldiers he'd trained, all the medics he'd taught, all the lives that had been saved because someone knew the right thing to do at the right time. He thought about Sarah alive in that hospital bed, instead of dead in a wrecked patrol car. It's worth a lot, Jack said quietly. Give me some time, okay? I need to figure some things out. Okay. Thank you for even considering it. Really. Reeves hesitated. And Jack, I read about your wife. What happened to her? I'm sorry, she was one of the good ones. Yes, she was. After Reeves hung up, Jack sat in silence for a long time. Then he picked up his phone again and called a different number, one he hadn't dialed in 3 years. Hello? The voice was female, older, wary. Margaret, it's Jack. A sharp intake of breath. Jack, it's been a while. I know. I'm sorry. I should have called more often. Margaret Rowan, Rebecca's mother, had never quite forgiven Jack for surviving when her daughter hadn't. It was unfair, irrational, and entirely understandable. They'd maintained minimal contact over the years, mostly for Ella's sake. How's Ella? Margaret asked, her voice softening slightly. She's good. Growing up fast. She asks about you. Tell her I'll come visit soon. A pause. Why are you calling, Jack? He took a breath. They want me to help catch the people who killed Rebecca. Silence on the other end, stretching long enough that Jack thought she might have hung up. Then, tell me everything. He did. Told her about saving Sarah, about Stone's offer, about the planned operation against the Vega cartel. Margaret listened without interrupting, and when he finished, she was quiet again. What does Ella know? She asked finally. Nothing. She knows I saved a cop, but not the rest of it. Are you going to do it? I don't know. Part of me wants to. Wants to make them pay for what they did. But I have Ella to think about. If something happens to me, then Ella loses both parents. I know. Margaret's voice was heavy. Jack, I'm not going to tell you what to do. You're a grown man, and Lord knows you've seen enough of life to make your own decisions. But I'll tell you what I think. Okay? Rebecca loved being a cop, loved helping people, stopping bad guys, making the world safer. She knew the risks, knew what could happen, and she chose to do it anyway because it mattered to her. It was who she was. Margaret's voice cracked slightly. When she died, I was so angry at her for taking those risks, angry at the department for not protecting her, angry at you for being overseas instead of here. But mostly, I was angry because she died doing what she loved, and I couldn't even be mad at her for it. Jack felt tears pricking his eyes. Margaret, let me finish. The point is, Rebecca made her choice. She chose to fight evil even though it cost her everything. And you chose to walk away from that fight for Ella's sake. That was the right choice, Jack. The brave choice. She took a shaky breath. But if you're asking my permission to go back, if you're asking whether Rebecca would want you to finish what she started, then yes, I think she would. I think she'd want these bastards caught. I think she'd want other cops to come home safe. And I think she'd want you to do what you're good at, what you were trained for, what you clearly need to do based on the fact that you're calling me about it. But Ella will be fine. If something happens to you, God forbid, she'll come live with me and Harold. We'll take care of her, raise her, love her. You know that. So don't use her as an excuse if what you're really afraid of is going back to that life. The words stung because they were true. Jack was afraid. Not of the danger, not of the cartels, but of becoming that person again. The soldier, the warrior, the man who'd learned to kill as easily as he'd learned to save. What if I can't come back from it? He asked quietly. What if I go back to that world and I can't be Ella's dad anymore, can't be normal? Then you fight to stay normal. You remember why you're doing it, for Rebecca, for Ella, for all the cops who need what you can teach them. You do the job, and then you come home. Margaret's voice was firm now. Rebecca managed it. She was a cop and a wife and a mother. You can do this and still be a good father. I believe that. Thank you, Jack whispered. Be safe, Jack. And and bring those sons of bitches to justice." The line went dead. Jack sat there holding the phone, feeling something shift inside him, a decision crystallizing, taking form, becoming real. He picked up Captain Stone's card and dialed the number. Stone answered on the second ring. "Rowan." "I'll do it," Jack said. "I'll train your people. I'll help with the operation, but I have conditions." "Name them." "First, nothing I do can put Ella at risk. If there's even a hint that the cartel knows I'm involved, I'm out. Second, I'm not carrying a weapon. I'm support only, medical, tactical planning, training. I'm not a cop, and I'm not going back to being a soldier. Third, when this operation is done, I'm done. No more cases, no more investigations, no consulting. I help you take down the Vega cartel, and then I go back to my life. Understood?" "Understood. Anything else?" Jack thought for a moment. "Yeah, Detective Reeves. I want him in my first training class. He needs this more than anyone." "Done. When can you start?" "Tomorrow. But Captain, I want to be clear about something. I'm doing this for Rebecca, for Sarah, for all the cops who might not come home if they don't have the skills to save themselves or their partners. I'm not doing it for revenge." "That's exactly why I want you on this team," Stone said. "Revenge makes people sloppy. Justice makes them sharp. Be at the station at 0800. We have a lot of work to do." Jack hung up and sat in his office as the afternoon light faded, thinking about choices and consequences, about duty and family, about the man he'd been and the man he'd tried to become. Somewhere in between those two versions of Jack, Rowan was the person he needed to be now. When Ella came home from school, he made her favorite dinner, spaghetti with meatballs, and listened to her chatter about her day, about her friends, about the art project she was working on. She was so bright, so full of life, so untouched by the darkness that had marked her parents' lives. After dinner, after homework, after she'd brushed her teeth and climbed into bed with her rabbit, Jack sat beside her and took her hand. "Sweetheart, I need to tell you something." She looked up at him with Rebecca's eyes. "What is it, Daddy?" "Remember the police officer I helped? Officer Miles? The one you saved from the burning car?" "Yes. Well, her captain asked me to help teach other police officers what I know, how to save people when they're hurt. It's going to mean I'll be gone some days working with them." Ella's forehead wrinkled. "Like a teacher?" "Exactly like a teacher." "That sounds good. You're really good at helping people." She squeezed his hand. "Will you be safe?" "Yes, baby. I'll be safe. I promise. I'm just teaching, not doing the dangerous stuff." "Okay." She yawned, already half asleep. "Daddy, I'm proud of you. Mommy would be proud too." The words hit him like a punch to the chest. He kissed her forehead, turned off the light, and stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching her sleep. Later that night, Jack went back to his office and pulled out his old gear. The tactical backpack he'd kept packed out of habit, the medical kit that had traveled with him through 2 war zones, the boots that had walked through places he tried not to remember. He checked everything methodically, replacing expired supplies, updating equipment, his hands moving through familiar patterns. On the wall, Rebecca smiled down at him from her photo. In his mind, he heard her voice. "You've got this, Jack. Go save some lives." "I'll try," he whispered to the empty room. "I'll try." At 0800 the next morning, Jack walked into the police station carrying his medical kit and a commitment he hoped he could keep. Captain Stone was waiting for him, along with a conference room full of officers, 20 of them, men and women, young and experienced, all looking at him with a mixture of curiosity and hope. Detective Danny Reeves sat in the front row, his eyes red-rimmed but determined. Stone made the introductions brief. "This is Jack Rowan, former Special Forces medic, Silver Star recipient, and the man who saved Officer Miles's life 3 nights ago using skills most of us don't have. For the next 3 weeks, he's going to change that. Pay attention, take notes, and learn everything you can. Your life might depend on it." Jack stood at the front of the room, feeling the weight of their expectations, their hope, their need. He thought about all the soldiers he'd trained, all the medics he'd taught, all the lives that had been saved because someone knew the right thing to do. "Before we start," he said, his voice carrying authority he'd thought he'd left behind, "I need you to understand something. What I'm going to teach you isn't theory. It's not textbook medicine. It's what works when someone is bleeding to death and the ambulance is 10 minutes away. It's ugly, it's harsh, and sometimes it's not enough. But it's better than nothing, and better than nothing is what keeps people alive. He pulled out a training dummy, set it on the table. We're going to start with the basics: arterial bleeding, tourniquet application, wound packing. Then we'll move to chest wounds, airways, shock management. By the time we're done, every one of you will be able to keep someone alive long enough to get them to real help. He met their eyes, one by one. Questions? Reeves raised his hand. What if we freeze? What if we know what to do but can't make ourselves do it? It was the right question, the real question, the one that mattered most. Then you practice until it's instinct, Jack said, until your hands move before your brain catches up. That's what we're going to do here. Practice until you can do this in your sleep. Because when the moment comes when your partner is bleeding out in front of you, you won't have time to think. You'll only have time to act. He picked up the dummy. So let's start learning how to act. For the next 8 hours, Jack taught. He demonstrated, corrected, pushed them through scenarios until their hands were steady and their movements automatic. He was demanding, exacting, refusing to accept anything less than perfect execution, because perfect execution was what saved lives. When the day ended, the officers filed out exhausted but energized, already talking about what they'd learned. Reeves hung back, approached Jack hesitantly. "Thank you," he said simply. This means everything to me." "Don't thank me yet," Jack replied. "Thank me when you save someone's life using what I taught you." "I will." Reeves headed for the door, then turned back. "Jack, I think you're doing the right thing, being here, teaching us. It matters." After he left, Stone appeared from his office. "Good work today. The team's impressed. They're good people. They'll learn fast." "Jack, about the operation, we need to start integrating you into the tactical planning. Can you stay late tomorrow? Meet the SWAT commanders? Go over the raid scenarios?" Jack thought about Ella at home, probably doing homework at the kitchen table. He thought about the promise he'd made her, about being safe, about coming home. But he also thought about Sarah in that hospital bed, alive because he'd known what to do. He thought about Reeves and Martinez, and how things might have been different if someone had taught them better. "Yeah," he said, "I can stay late. Let's make sure this operation goes right." Stone nodded, satisfied. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we start the real work." Jack drove home through the darkening evening, his mind already running through tactical scenarios, medical contingencies, all the things that could go wrong and how to prevent them. He was back in that world now, fully committed, and there was no turning back. When he walked through his front door, Ella looked up from her homework and smiled. "Hi, Daddy. How is teaching?" "Good, sweetheart. Really good." "Did you save any lives today?" Not yet, he thought, but soon, very soon. "Not today," he said, kneeling beside her. "But I taught people how to save lives." "That's almost as good." She hugged him tight. "I love you, Daddy." "I love you too, baby, more than anything." That night, after Ella was asleep, Jack stood in his office one more time, looking at Rebecca's photo. The operation was in 3 weeks. 3 weeks to train the officers, plan the raids, prepare for every contingency. 3 weeks until he'd face the people who'd killed his wife. He wasn't looking for revenge. He'd meant what he told Stone, but justice was something worth fighting for. Justice was something Rebecca would have wanted. Jack pulled out his old combat knife, the one he'd carried through too many missions to count, and tested the edge. Still sharp, still ready, just like him. The 3 weeks passed in a blur of training sessions, tactical briefings, and late nights poring over intelligence reports. Jack fell into the rhythm of it like he'd never left. The early mornings, the focused intensity, the constant mental calculation of variables and contingencies. His body remembered what his mind had tried to forget. By the end of the second week, every officer in the department had gone through his combat medicine course. Danny Reeves had been his best student, attacking each lesson with an almost desperate intensity, as if mastering these skills could somehow redeem him for Martinez's death. Jack recognized that drive. He'd seen it in young soldiers who'd lost their first friend in combat, who believed that being better, faster, stronger would protect them from loss. It wouldn't. Loss came regardless. but being prepared helped you survive it. Sarah had been released from the hospital after 10 days, still moving carefully but recovering faster than the doctors had expected. She'd attended every tactical planning session, her insights into the cartel's operations proving invaluable. She and Jack had developed an easy working relationship built on mutual respect and shared experience. She never asked him about Rebecca, and he never asked her about the night she'd almost died. Some things didn't need words. Now, on the morning of the operation, Jack stood in the command center of the state police headquarters, surrounded by monitors showing live feeds from 6 different locations across 3 states. 23 teams were in position, ready to hit the Vega cartel's operations simultaneously. It was the largest coordinated strike against organized crime the region had ever attempted. Captain Stone stood at the center of it all, a phone pressed to each ear, coordinating with FBI, DEA, and local agencies. The room hummed with controlled tension, officers checking equipment, intelligence analysts verifying last-minute details, communication specialists testing encrypted channels. Jack wore a headset connected to all 6 tactical teams, his role exactly what Stone had promised: medical oversight and tactical support from the command center. He had a laptop open in front of him displaying the medical status of every officer in the field, along with the locations of all ambulances and trauma centers. On paper, he was just another consultant, a voice in the background, but everyone in that room knew who he was and what he'd done. When he spoke, people listened. Sarah appeared at his elbow, moving with the careful precision of someone still healing. She wore a tactical vest over civilian clothes. Officially, she was dead, so she couldn't be in the field. But Stone had brought her into the command center as a special advisor, the one person who knew the Vega operation better than anyone. "How are you feeling?" Jack asked without looking away from his screens. "Like I'm about to watch everything I've worked for either succeed spectacularly or fail catastrophically." She managed a tight smile. "You?" "Same." "Jack, I wanted to say, before this starts, thank you for everything. The training you've done, the planning, all of it. You didn't have to do any of this." "Yes, I did." He finally looked at her. "These are good people putting their lives on the line. They deserve every advantage we can give them." Stone's voice cut through the room. "All teams, sound off." One by one, the team leaders reported in. Alpha team at the main distribution warehouse. Bravo team at the Vega Brothers suspected safe house. Charlie through Foxtrot teams at various financial and operational targets. Every team was in position, every officer accounted for. Jack's headset crackled with the voice of Lieutenant Hayes, commander of Alpha Team. "Rowan, you on this channel?" "I'm here, Hayes. Just wanted to say thanks for the training. My guys feel ready." "Stay sharp. Remember your sectors of fire and keep your medic close. Anything goes wrong, I'm here." "Copy that." Stone checked his watch. "We go in 5 minutes. All teams prepare for simultaneous breach on my mark." He looked around the room, his gaze settling on Jack. "Anything to add?" Jack activated his microphone, broadcasting to all teams. "Listen up. You've trained hard, you know your roles, and you've got good people watching your backs. Trust your training, trust your partners, and if someone goes down, you keep them alive until help arrives. You all know how to do this now. Just remember, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Don't rush, don't panic, and come home safe." A chorus of acknowledgments came back through the channel. Jack could hear the tension in their voices, the adrenaline starting to kick in. He'd heard that same tone in the voices of soldiers about to enter combat, fear mixed with determination, doubt tempered by training. The minutes crawled by. Jack watched the clock, watched the screens, watched Stone coordinate final details with federal agents. In war zones, Jack had always found this part the hardest. The waiting, the anticipation, the moment before everything exploded into action, when you could still imagine all the ways things might go wrong. 60 seconds, Stone announced. Sarah's hand found Jack's arm, squeezed once. He glanced at her and saw his own tension reflected in her eyes. This was her operation, her investigation. 3 years of work coming down to the next few minutes. 30 seconds. Jack's hands moved across his keyboard, pulling up medical protocols, trauma center locations, helicopter availability. His mind was already running scenarios, gunshot wounds, blast injuries, crush trauma. He taught these officers well, but teaching and doing were different things. When the bullets started flying, when their partners were bleeding, Would they remember? Would their training override their fear? 10 seconds. All teams prepare to breach. The room fell silent except for the soft hum of electronics and the collective held breath of everyone watching. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Execute, execute, execute. On the screen, 6 teams moved simultaneously. Doors burst open, flashbangs detonated, officers poured into buildings with weapons raised. The carefully choreographed chaos of a tactical raid unfolded across multiple locations at once. Jack's attention split across all the feeds, but he focused primarily on Alpha Team, the main warehouse where the Vega brothers were most likely to be. Lieutenant Hayes' voice came through clear and steady. Alpha Team, we're in. First floor clear. Moving to second level. Bravo Team in position. Safe house appears empty. Checking secondary structures. Charlie Team encountering resistance. Shots fired. Shots fired. Jack's pulse jumped. Charlie Team, report. We're okay. Suspects fired through a door. No officers hit. Returning fire. Hold your fire unless you have clear targets, Stone ordered. We want them alive if possible. The next few minutes were a controlled storm of activity. Teams cleared rooms, secured suspects, called out findings. The coordination was impressive, every team working in sync, every movement calculated. Jack's training had focused on the medical side, but he could see Stone's tactical influence in the way the teams moved, covered each other, maintained discipline under pressure. Then Hayes' voice, sharp with urgency. Alpha Team has contact, multiple armed suspects on the second floor. We're taking fire. The sound of gunshots crackled through the channel. Jack leaned toward his screen, watching the Alpha Team feed. Officers were pinned down behind cover, muzzle flashes visible in the warehouse's dim interior. Hayes, status? Stone demanded. 6 suspects, maybe more. They're dug in behind shipping containers. Military-grade weapons, body armor. This isn't some street gang, Captain. These guys know what they're doing. Jack's mind raced. Military-grade weapons, body armor. Former Mexican special forces, just like the intelligence had suggested. This was the real fight, the one they'd been preparing for. Alpha Team, hold position, Stone ordered. Don't advance until we can get additional support. Negative, Captain. We got them boxed in. If we wait, they might detonate evidence or call for their own backup. We need to push now. Jack could hear the calculation in Hayes' voice. The tactical assessment, the weighing of risks. It was the right call from a military perspective, but these weren't soldiers. They were cops, and some of them were probably scared out of their minds. Hayes, this is Rowan. What's your team's status? All officers accounted for, no injuries so far, but we're burning time. Okay, listen to me. You've got the training, use it. Advance by pairs, covering fire, exactly like we practiced. Keep your medic, that's Thompson, right? Right. Keep Thompson in the center of your formation. Anyone takes a hit, you pull back to him immediately. Don't try to be a hero. Understand? Copy that. Alpha Team, prepare to advance on my mark. Stone shot Jack a look that was equal parts concern and trust. They both knew this was the critical moment. If Alpha Team could take down the Vega brothers without casualties, the whole operation would be a success. If they lost officers, especially if they lost them to poor tactics or preventable injuries, it would taint everything. Jack watched the screen as Alpha Team began their advance. Hayes had divided his 12 officers into 6 pairs, each covering the other as they moved between positions. The suspects continued firing, but their shots were becoming less accurate, more desperate. They were surrounded, and they knew it. Alpha 4, I've got eyes on a secondary exit, one officer reported. Southwest corner, they might be trying to flank us. Alpha 6 covering that position, another voice confirmed. No movement yet. The firefight continued, measured bursts of gunfire echoing through the warehouse. Jack's hands were clenched on the edge of the desk, every muscle in his body tense. This was the part he hated, being on the outside, listening, unable to directly help. In combat zones, he'd been in the thick of it, moving with the teams, treating casualties under fire. Here, he could only wait and hope his training was enough. Suspect down, Hayes reported. One more breaking for that southwest exit. Alpha 6, I see him. He's yours. A short burst of gunfire, then silence. Suspect in custody. He's hit but alive. Thompson, get over here. Jack leaned into his microphone. Thompson, what's the status? Gunshot wound to the shoulder, through and through, bleeding controlled. He'll make it. Thompson's voice was steady, professional. The kid had learned well. Good work. Keep him stable for transport. The raid continued with surgical precision. Alpha team secured the second floor, found 3 more suspects hiding in an office, took them into custody without additional shots fired. In the basement, they discovered exactly what Sarah had predicted: pallets of cocaine, heroin, and methamphetamine, along with weapons, cash, and financial records. But no Vega brothers. Captain, we've cleared the entire warehouse, Hayes reported. We've got 7 suspects in custody, massive amounts of drugs and evidence, but the primary targets aren't here. Stone's jaw tightened. Bravo, team. What's your status at the safe house? Still clear, Captain. If they were here, they're gone now. Across the room, Sarah muttered a curse. Jack understood her frustration. They'd hit the organization hard, but without the brothers themselves, the Vega cartel could rebuild. New leadership, same business. Then a new voice crackled over the channel. Command, this is Delta Team. We've got something. Delta Team was at a secondary location, a small office building in the industrial district that intelligence had tagged as a possible financial hub. It was supposed to be a low-priority target, mostly paperwork and accountants. Stone leaned forward. Delta, report. Sir, we found a hidden basement level. There's a vehicle down here. Looks like they were preparing to evacuate. And we've got 3 high-value targets trying to access it. They're armed, but haven't engaged yet. Orders? Jack pulled up the Delta Team feed. The camera showed a concrete basement, a black SUV with its engine running, and 3 men in expensive suits holding pistols but looking more like they wanted to surrender than fight. Sarah grabbed the desk, her eyes wide. That's them. That's the Vega brothers. I've been tracking these bastards for 3 years. That's Miguel, Carlos, and Rafael. Stone was already on it. Delta Team, exercise extreme caution. We want them alive. Negotiation first, force only if necessary. Lieutenant Park, Delta Team Commander, responded immediately. Understood. Suspects, this is the police. You're surrounded. Drop your weapons and put your hands on your heads. Through the feed, Jack could see the 3 men exchanging glances. One of them, the oldest, probably Miguel, said something in Spanish. Then, slowly, deliberately, he set his pistol on the hood of the SUV and raised his hands. His brothers followed suit. Suspects are complying, Park reported. We're moving in to secure them now. The command center erupted in controlled celebration, fists pumping, officers embracing, years of frustration and anger channeling into this single moment of victory. Stone allowed himself a tight smile, then immediately returned to business. All teams, continue securing your locations. We need every piece of evidence documented, every suspect processed correctly, no mistakes. By the book. But Jack was focused on something else. On his medical monitor, one of the Delta Team officers showed an elevated heart rate, significantly elevated, beyond what adrenaline should cause. Officer Chen, according to the biometric readout. Delta Team, this is Rowan. Put me through to Officer Chen. A moment later, a young woman's voice came through, slightly breathless. This is Chen. Chen, how are you feeling right now? I'm fine, just excited. We got them. We actually got them. Are you having any chest pain, tightness, difficulty breathing? A pause. Maybe a little tight, but it's just adrenaline, right? Jack's instincts were screaming. Park, get Chen out of that basement now. She might be having a cardiac event. What? She looks fine. Her biometrics say otherwise. Get her topside and get a paramedic on her immediately. To his credit, Park didn't argue. Chen, with me. Now, Thompson, grab the medical kit and meet us at the ground floor. Sir, I'm really okay. That's an order, Chen. Jack watched the monitor as Chen's readings continued to spike. Sarah looked at him questioningly. You think she's having a heart attack? I think she's having some kind of cardiac episode. Could be stress-induced, could be an underlying condition. Either way, she needs immediate attention. 2 minutes later, Park's voice came back, more urgent now. Rowan, Chen collapsed as soon as we got her outside. She's unconscious, not breathing right. Jack's training kicked in instantly. Thompson, you there? Right here. Check her pulse. Carotid, not wrist. Checking. I've got a pulse, but it's weak and irregular. Okay, she's in cardiac arrest. Start CPR immediately. 30 compressions, 2 breaths, standard protocol. Park, call for emergency transport code 3. She needs a hospital now. Through the feed, Jack could see Thompson working on Chen, performing chest compressions with the steady rhythm Jack had drilled into him during training. Other Delta Team officers stood around, some looking scared, some looking helpless. This was the reality of police work. Sometimes the danger didn't come from bullets. Thompson, how are you doing? Jack kept his voice calm, authoritative. Thompson needed confidence right now, not panic. I'm doing it just like you taught us. Compressions are good. She's getting air. Perfect. Keep going. Don't stop until the paramedics arrive. Stone was already coordinating the ambulance. ETA 3 minutes on emergency medical. Jack pulled up Chen's personnel file. 24 years old, passed all her physicals, no known heart conditions. But stress and adrenaline could trigger events in people with undiagnosed conditions. The human body was fragile in ways that surprised people. 1 minute out, Stone announced. Thompson, stay with her. You're doing great. Her lips are getting some color back. Is that good? That's very good. Means you're getting oxygen to her brain. Keep going. The paramedics arrived and took over, loading Chen onto a stretcher and into the ambulance with practiced efficiency. Jack coordinated with the hospital, gave them Chen's information and Thompson's field assessment, ensured they were prepared for her arrival. As the ambulance pulled away, Thompson's voice came through the channel, shaky now that the crisis had passed. Jack, did I do okay? Did I save her? You did perfect, Thompson. Textbook CPR. You gave her every chance. Jack paused. And you did it under pressure, with people watching, in a situation where every second counted. Your partner would be proud. There was a long silence, then a quiet thank you that carried the weight of months of guilt and grief finally beginning to lift. The rest of the operation proceeded without incident. All teams secured their locations, processed suspects, cataloged evidence. By late afternoon, the full scope of what they'd accomplished became clear. 7 major Vega cartel locations shut down. 43 arrests, including the 3 brothers themselves, and seizures totaling millions of dollars in drugs, weapons, and cash. It was a devastating blow to one of the region's most dangerous criminal organizations. More importantly, only one officer had been seriously injured, Officer Chen, who the hospital reported was stable and expected to make a full recovery. The gunshot suspect Thompson had treated was also stable and in custody. Given the scale of the operation, it was almost miraculous. Stone gathered the command center's staff as the last teams returned to base. I want to say something before we all go home. What we did today, what you all did, this is the kind of operation that changes things. We didn't just arrest some criminals. We dismantled an organization that has killed 40-plus people in this state alone. We shut down a pipeline that was poisoning our communities. And we did it smart, we did it safe, and we brought everyone home. He looked directly at Jack. A month ago, Officer Danny Reeves watched his partner die because he didn't know how to stop the bleeding. Today, Officer Thompson saved Officer Chen's life using the skills Jack Rowan taught him. That difference, that's everything. That's why we do this job, not just to catch bad guys, but to protect each other, to make sure we all get to go home to our families. The room broke into applause. Jack felt deeply uncomfortable with the attention, but Sarah squeezed his shoulder and whispered, "Take the win. You earned it." As the crowd dispersed, officers heading out to celebrate or decompress or just sleep off the adrenaline crash, Stone approached Jack with a folder. "These are the initial interrogation reports from the Vega brothers. Thought you might want to see them." Jack opened the folder, scanning the documents. Miguel Vega, the oldest brother and operational leader, had already started talking, trying to cut a deal. And there, in his statement, was a name Jack recognized: Detective Luis Santos. The officer who'd been in charge of Rebecca's murder investigation 6 years ago. The one who'd declared it a cold case after 6 months. According to Miguel, Santos had been on the Vega payroll for 8 years, had fed them information about police investigations, had warned them when undercover operations were planned. And he'd been the one to tell the Vega enforcers that Rebecca was getting close, had provided her patrol route the night she was killed. Jack's hands tightened on the folder. "Does Santos know we have this information?" "Not yet. We're bringing him in tomorrow morning. Federal charges, conspiracy to commit murder, racketeering, the whole package. Stone met Jack's eyes. I know this is personal for you. If you want to be there when we arrest him. No. Jack handed the folder back. That's your job, not mine. I'm not a cop. I'm not looking for revenge. Just justice? Something like that. Stone studied him for a moment. You know, when I first approached you about this, I wasn't sure you'd actually go through with it. Thought maybe you'd train the team and then back out when things got real. I'm glad I was wrong. I made a commitment. I keep my commitments. You did more than that. You changed how this department operates. The training you developed, the protocols you put in place, we're implementing them department-wide. Every officer is going to go through your combat medicine course now. It's mandatory. Jack felt a strange mixture of pride and discomfort. That's good. That's what matters. And the operation itself, your tactical input, your calm under pressure, the way you handled the Chen situation. Command wants to offer you a permanent consulting position. Regular training duties, tactical advisory role, good pay. No. The word came out harder than Jack intended. I told you from the start, Captain. When this operation was done, I was done. I have a daughter waiting for me at home. That's where I belong. Stone nodded slowly. I understand. Can't say I'm not disappointed, but I respect it. He extended his hand. Thank you, Jack, for everything. You helped us get justice for Rebecca, for all the Vega victims, and you gave this department tools that will save lives for years to come. That's a hell of a legacy. Jack shook his hand. Take care of your people, Captain. Make sure they keep training, keep sharp. Don't let them get complacent. I won't. Sarah was waiting by the exit, still moving carefully, but looking better than she had in weeks. The satisfaction of seeing the Vega brothers in custody had brought color back to her face, life back to her eyes. You heading out? She asked. Yeah. Long day. Jack, I wanted to say, what you did here, it was more than just training. You gave these officers confidence. You made them believe they could handle anything. That's not something you can teach from a manual. They already had it in them. I just helped them find it. Always so humble. She smiled. For what it's worth, I think Rebecca would be proud of you. Not just for taking down the people who killed her, but for the way you did it, with honor, with purpose, without losing yourself to anger. Jack thought about that. I almost did lose myself to it. 6 years ago, when she died, I wanted to hunt them down myself. Use everything the army taught me to make them pay. If I hadn't had Ella to think about, I might have done it. But you didn't. You chose to be a father instead of a soldier. That takes a different kind of courage. And now? Now you gotta be both, for a little while anyway. Sarah's expression turned serious. Are you really done? No more consulting, no more training? I'm really done. This was always temporary, a way to finish something Rebecca started to help good people stay safe. But my life is in Cedar Ridge now, with Ella. That's where I need to be. She's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have her. They stood there for a moment, two people bound by violence and survival, by the strange intimacy that comes from saving and being saved. Then Sarah pulled him into a careful hug, mindful of her still healing side. Thank you, she whispered. For my life. For everything. You're welcome. Stay safe, Detective. You too, Jack Rowan. The drive home took longer than usual. Jack deliberately took the scenic route, needing time to decompress, to process everything that had happened. The operation had been a success by every metric, but he felt strangely hollow. Justice had been served, Rebecca's killers identified and arrested, the Vega cartel dismantled. It should have felt like closure. Instead, it felt like an ending, but not the one he'd expected. He'd spent 6 years trying to forget who he'd been, trying to bury the soldier and the medic and become just a father, just a normal man living a normal life. But the last month had proven that person was still there, would always be there. A part of him he couldn't erase no matter how far he ran. The question was, what did he do with that now? Ella was at the kitchen table when he arrived, working on a science project with Margaret sitting beside her. Jack had called his mother-in-law that morning, before the operation, just in case. She'd driven up immediately, had stayed with Ella all day. Now she looked up at Jack with eyes that understood everything he didn't say. Daddy! Ella jumped up and ran to him, Grammy came to visit. I see that. Jack hugged her tight, feeling the simple, solid reality of her in his arms. This was what mattered. This was what was real. Margaret stood and moved to the living room, giving them space but keeping watch. She was a good woman, Jack thought. Rebecca had inherited her strength from somewhere. How was your day, sweetheart? Jack asked, setting Ella back down. Good. We learned about photosynthesis. Did you know plants can make their own food from sunlight? That's so cool. She grabbed his hand. How was teaching? It was good. We finished a big project today. Very successful. Are you going to keep teaching? Jack looked into his daughter's eyes, Rebecca's eyes, and saw trust there, uncomplicated and complete. No, baby. I'm done now. Back to regular work. Back to being home every night. Oh, she processed this. I liked that you were teaching. You were happy. The observation startled him. I was happy? Yeah, like more than usual. You smiled more. You seemed like, she searched for the word, like you seemed like you. Later, after Ella was in bed, Jack sat with Margaret on the porch, both of them holding coffee cups and watching the stars emerge. She's perceptive, Margaret said quietly. Always has been. Too perceptive sometimes. Jack, can I ask you something? Of course. Are you really done? Or are you just telling yourself that because you think it's what you should do? Jack was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. A month ago, I would have said I was done with that life forever. Now, I'm not sure anymore. What changed? I saved Sarah's life, trained those officers, helped take down the people who killed Rebecca. And it felt right, natural, like I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. He turned to look at her. But I have Ella. I can't keep putting myself in dangerous situations, can't keep being that person and still be the father she needs. Margaret set down her coffee cup. You know what Rebecca used to say? She said you could be a warrior and a father at the same time. That those things weren't opposites, they were complementary. You protect your family by being strong, by being skilled, by being someone who can handle danger when it comes. But she died being a warrior. No, she died being a cop. There's a difference. Margaret's voice was firm. She died protecting people, stopping bad guys, making the world safer. And yes, it cost her everything. But she chose that life knowing the risks because it mattered to her. You choosing to walk away from it, that's valid too. But don't walk away because you're afraid. Walk away because it's genuinely what you want. Jack thought about Officer Thompson performing CPR on Chen, thought about Danny Reeves finally finding redemption in training, thought about Sarah alive in a hospital bed instead of dead in a wrecked car. I don't know what I want, he admitted. Then don't decide tonight. Just keep the door open, that's all I'm saying. Margaret stood, patted his shoulder. I should go. Long drive back, but Jack, today, whatever you did, I'm proud of you. And Rebecca would be too. After she left, Jack sat on the porch for a long time, thinking about choices and consequences, about duty and family, about the space between who he'd been and who he wanted to become. His phone buzzed, a text from Captain Stone. Santos arrested, confessed to everything, full cooperation, thought you'd want to know. Another text, this one from Danny Reeves. Chen's awake, she's going to be fine. Thompson saved her life, just like you taught him. Thank you. Jack stared at the messages, feeling something shift inside him. He'd told Stone he was done, had meant it, had been ready to walk away forever. But maybe Margaret was right. Maybe this wasn't about choosing between being a warrior and being a father. Maybe it was about finding a way to be both. He looked up at the stars, at the vast, indifferent universe that had taken Rebecca from him and given him Ella, that had led him to that highway on that stormy night, that had brought him full circle to this moment. What do you think, Beck? He whispered to the darkness. What should I do? The stars didn't answer. They never did. But somewhere in his heart, in the place where Rebecca still lived, Jack thought he knew what she'd say. Do what matters. Help people. Stay true to who you are. He stood up, went inside, and looked in on Ella one more time. She was sleeping peacefully, clutching her rabbit, safe and loved and protected. Whatever he decided, whatever came next, she would always be his priority. always be his reason. But maybe, just maybe, there was room in his life for more than one purpose. Room to be a father and a teacher, a protector and a healer, a man who'd learned to save lives and wanted to keep doing it. He returned to his office and opened his laptop, pulled up a blank document, started writing. Combat Medicine Training Protocol for Law Enforcement, Advanced Course Curriculum. The words flowed easily, naturally. Jack worked through the night, designing a more comprehensive program, one that could be implemented across multiple departments, that could train not just officers but paramedics, security personnel, anyone who might need to save a life under pressure. When dawn broke, he had 30 pages of detailed curriculum, complete with practical exercises, assessment criteria, and equipment recommendations. It was good work, important work, work that mattered. Jack saved the document, sent it to Captain Stone with a brief note. For when you're ready to expand the program. No charge. Just make sure they learn it right. Then he closed the laptop, made breakfast for Ella, and got ready for a normal day. Construction work, homework help, dinner, bedtime stories. But he kept his tactical gear packed, kept his medical kit updated, kept his skills sharp. Just in case. Because Jack Rowan had learned something important over the last month. You could choose to walk away from the fight, but you couldn't choose for the fight to walk away from you. And when it came, when someone needed help, when lives hung in the balance, he wanted to be ready. Not as a soldier, not as a cop, but as someone who'd learned to save lives and refused to let that knowledge go to waste. As someone who understood that true strength wasn't about fighting. It was about knowing when to fight, when to teach, when to heal, and when to simply be present for the people who needed you most. Jack Rowan was done being a soldier, but he would never be done being a protector. And maybe, he thought, as he watched Ella eat her cereal and chatter about her day, that was enough. 2 weeks after the Vega operation, Jack was replacing rotted deck boards on the Henderson place when his phone rang. He didn't recognize the number, almost let it go to voicemail, but something made him answer. Mr. Rowan, this is Chief Amanda Wells from the Riverside Police Department. Captain Stone gave me your number. I hope I'm not interrupting. Jack wiped the sweat from his forehead, looking out at the view from the Hendersons' property, pine trees stretching to the horizon, the kind of peaceful scene that made you forget the world had dark corners. Not interrupting. What can I do for you, Chief? I heard about the training program you developed, about what happened with the Vega operation. I'd like to hire you to train my department. We're smaller than the state police, only 40 officers, but we've had 2 line-of-duty deaths in the last 3 years. Both were situations where better medical training might have made a difference. Jack set down his hammer. This was the 3rd call like this in 2 weeks. Word was spreading about what he'd done, about the curriculum he'd developed, about Officer Chen surviving, because Thompson knew what to do. Chief, I appreciate the interest, but I'm not really taking on new clients. The Vega operation was a special circumstance. Mr. Rowan, one of those officers who died was 23 years old, fresh out of the academy. He bled out from a leg wound while his partner tried to stop it with his bare hands. The other was a veteran, 15 years on the force, heart attack during a pursuit. Nobody knew CPR well enough to help him. Her voice was steady, but Jack could hear the pain underneath. I don't want to make that call to another family. I don't want to tell another wife her husband isn't coming home because we weren't prepared. Jack closed his eyes. He'd known this would happen. Success breeds attention. Attention breeds requests. Requests breed obligations. He told himself he was done, had meant it, but every call chipped away at that resolution. Because how did you say no to saving lives? Let me think about it, he said finally. Give me a few days. That's all I ask. Thank you, Mr. Rowan. That evening, after Ella was asleep, Jack sat in his office staring at the wall of memories. His silver star hung there beside Rebecca's academy photo, surrounded by commendations and unit photos and all the artifacts of a life he'd tried to leave behind. His phone showed 6 missed calls from other departments, 3 emails requesting training, and a voicemail from a hospital asking if he'd consider teaching their emergency room staff. The door creaked open behind him. Ella stood there in her pajamas, clutching her rabbit, her hair messy from sleep. Daddy, you okay? Jack turned, forced a smile. I'm fine, sweetheart. Just thinking. Why aren't you asleep? I heard you talking on the phone earlier. You sounded sad. She patted over and climbed into his lap, something she'd been doing less and less as she got older. Are people asking you to teach again? Yeah, a lot of people. Do you want to? It was such a simple question, but it cut right to the heart of everything Jack had been wrestling with. Did he want to? That was the problem. Part of him did. Part of him had come alive during those weeks training officers, planning operations, using skills he'd thought were gathering dust. Part of him had felt purpose again, had felt like he was making a real difference. But another part of him just wanted to be here, in this small house, with this small girl, living this small quiet life where nobody got shot, and nobody died, and nobody needed him to be anything more than daddy. I don't know, baby. It's complicated. Ella was quiet for a moment, then said, At school, Mrs. Patterson says everyone has gifts, like special things they're really good at. And she says it's important to share your gifts with people who need them. She looked up at him with those serious eyes that were too old for 10. Teaching people how to save other people is a really good gift, Daddy. Jack felt his throat tighten. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just don't always notice. She grinned, then grew serious again. I know you want to be here with me all the time, and I love that. But I also know you're really, really good at helping people. And maybe you can do both? Maybe. He hugged her close. You know I'll always put you first, right? No matter what. I know. That's why I'm not worried. She yawned. Can you tuck me back in? Of course. After settling Ella back into bed, Jack returned to his office and did something he hadn't done in 6 years. He opened the locked drawer at the bottom of his desk and pulled out Rebecca's journal, the one she'd kept during her investigation, the one that had been returned to him with her personal effects. He'd only read it once, right after her funeral, and the pain had been too raw to process. Now, with 6 years of distance and a month of reconnecting with that world, he opened it again. Rebecca's handwriting filled the pages, neat and precise, documenting evidence and leads and theories about the Vega cartel. But interspersed with the professional notes were personal observations, thoughts about the job, about life, about Jack and Ella. He found the entry dated 3 weeks before she died. Jack called today from Kandahar. He sounded tired, that deep tired that comes from seeing too much, doing too much. I told him about Ella's school play, about the new lead I'm following on the Vega case, about normal life stuff. He listened like he always does, but I could hear it in his voice. He's ready to come home, ready to leave that world behind. Sometimes I feel guilty that I'm still in this world, chasing bad guys, putting myself in danger, while asking him to give it up. But we both knew when we had Ella that one of us needed to step back. His combat deployments were getting longer, more dangerous. My police work was at least predictable, scheduled, manageable. Or so we told ourselves. The truth is, this job can be just as dangerous. The Vega investigation is heating up, and I'm getting close to something big. Captain Reeves pulled me aside yesterday, told me to be careful, said these people play for keeps. I know he's right, but I also know that if I don't do this, if I don't stop them, they'll keep hurting people, keep destroying families, keep poisoning our community. That's the burden, isn't it? Knowing you can make a difference and choosing whether to bear the cost. Jack's borne it for years in war zones. Now it's my turn to bear it here. I just hope I'm strong enough. Hope I'm smart enough. Hope I can finish this before... The entry ended there, unfinished. 3 weeks later, she was dead. Jack closed the journal carefully, his hands shaking. She'd known. On some level, she'd known how dangerous it was getting, had known the Vega cartel might come for her. But she'd kept going because it mattered. Because people needed her to be brave enough to face the darkness. Now people were asking him to do the same thing, not to face cartels or deploy to war zones, but to share what he knew, to help others survive the dangers he'd survived. Was that so different? His phone buzzed. A text from Captain Stone. Department ceremony next week. Recognizing officers from the Vega operation. Would mean a lot if you came. No pressure. Another text from Sarah. How are you holding up? I know you said you were done, but people keep talking about what you did. Hope you're not getting overwhelmed. And another from Danny Reeves. Thompson is doing great. He wants to become a full-time tactical medic now, says you inspired him. Thought you'd want to know. Jack stared at the messages, at Rebecca's journal, at the wall of memories. 3 different paths stretching before him. He could ignore the calls, decline the requests, go back to construction work and quiet evenings. He could accept every offer, train every department, become what they clearly wanted him to be. Or he could find something in between, a way to honor Rebecca's memory and his own skills without losing himself or Ella in the process. The next morning, Jack called Chief Wells back. "Chief, I've thought about your offer. I can't commit to regular training. I have responsibilities here. But I could do an intensive 2-week course, train your officers, and leave you with a complete curriculum you can maintain on your own. After that, I'm available for occasional consultation, but nothing more." "That would be perfect, Mr. Rowan. When can you start?" "I need to arrange care for my daughter. Give me 2 weeks to get things organized." Over the next few days, Jack developed a system. He'd train departments intensively for short periods, never more than 2 weeks at a time, never more than once a month. Margaret agreed to stay with Ella during those periods, and Ella seemed genuinely excited about spending more time with her grandmother. Jack would teach, consult, share his knowledge, but always come home. Always maintain the life he'd built. It wasn't perfect. It meant time away from Ella, time spent in that other world. But it was sustainable. It was a compromise between the man he'd been and the man he was trying to be. The department ceremony arrived on a crisp autumn evening. Jack wore the only suit he owned, uncomfortable in the collar and tie, wishing he could be anywhere else. But when Captain Stone had personally called to ask him to come, explaining what it would mean to the officers who'd been on the raid, Jack hadn't been able to refuse. The police headquarters conference room was packed with officers in dress uniforms, their families, and local officials. Jack stood near the back, trying to be inconspicuous, but people kept approaching him, shaking his hand, thanking him for the training. It was overwhelming and humbling in equal measure. Sarah found him before the ceremony started. She was in a dark blue dress, looking healthy and whole, the pale shadow of her near death completely gone. "You came," she said, smiling. Stone asked nicely. "He's good at that." She touched his arm. "How are you? I heard you're getting a lot of training requests." "Too many, but I'm figuring out how to manage it." "Good. The world needs what you do, Jack, but you need your life too. Balance is important." Before Jack could respond, Stone stepped to the podium and called for attention. The ceremony began with commendations for various officers involved in the Vega operation. Thompson received a medal for saving Officer Chen's life. Hayes and his Alpha team were recognized for their tactical excellence. Sarah, though officially dead as far as the public knew, received a private commendation that Stone presented carefully, without photographs. Then Stone did something Jack wasn't expecting. He pulled out a frame and held it up for the room to see. Inside was Jack's silver star, the one that had been stored in his closet for 6 years. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to talk about someone who isn't a member of this department, but who exemplifies everything we value. Jack Rowan, please come up here. Jack froze. This wasn't what they'd discussed. Stone had said it would be a simple ceremony, nothing involving him directly. He considered refusing, walking out, but Sarah gave him a gentle push, and suddenly he was moving forward, hyper-aware of every eye in the room watching him. At the podium, Stone spoke clearly. "Most of you know Jack's story by now. Special Forces combat medic, Silver Star recipient, the man who saved Officer Miles and trained many of you in life-saving techniques. What you might not know is that 6 years ago, Jack lost his wife, Officer Rebecca Rowan, to the same cartel we just took down. He could have walked away forever. Instead, he came back to help us, to teach us, to make sure no other officer dies because they don't know what to do." Stone gestured to the wall behind him, where fallen officers' names were engraved in marble. Rebecca's name was there, 4th from the top. Beside it now hung Jack's silver star in a shadow box, along with a small plaque. Jack read the inscription, "In honor of Jack Rowan, who reminded us that the highest form of service is teaching others to serve. Your gift saves lives every day." The room erupted in applause. Jack stood there, stunned, not sure what to say or do. Stone handed him the microphone, and the room fell silent. Jack looked out at the faces watching him. Young officers and veterans, men and women who put on uniforms every day knowing they might not come home. He saw Thompson, who'd learned to save lives instead of just taking them. He saw Reeves, who'd found redemption in training. He saw Sarah, alive because he'd stopped on a rainy highway. "I don't deserve this," Jack said finally, his voice rough. "I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who learned skills in war that turned out to be useful here." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "But if this helps, if having my name on that wall reminds you to train hard and watch out for each other and never stop learning, then I'm honored. Rebecca would be honored too." He looked at her name on the marble. "My wife was a cop, a damn good one. She understood something I'm only starting to really get. The courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about being afraid and doing the right thing anyway. She was afraid the night she died. I know that now. But she went anyway because people needed her. That's what you all do every day. You face danger because someone has to, because communities need protection, because good people don't run from evil." Jack's voice strengthened. "What I taught you, the medical skills, the tactics, that's just tools. Important tools, but still just tools. What really matters is the decision to use those tools, the decision to stop when someone needs help, the decision to run toward danger instead of away from it, the decision to be the person who makes a difference." He met the eyes of the officers in the front row. "Some of you will face situations where what I taught you might save a life. When that happens, when you're scared and tired and overwhelmed but you do it anyway, that's not me saving someone. That's you. That's your courage, your training, your choice to be the person who doesn't give up." Jack handed the microphone back to Stone and stepped away from the podium. The applause was deafening, but he barely heard it. He was looking at Rebecca's name, at his medal hanging beside it, thinking about the circle that had closed. From soldier to husband to widow to teacher to something else entirely, something he was still figuring out. After the ceremony, as people mingled and talked and celebrated, Jack slipped outside for air. The evening was cool, the sky darkening toward night. He stood in the parking lot, breathing deeply, trying to process everything. "Quite a speech." Jack turned. An older man approached, maybe 70, wearing a suit that had seen better days. His face was weathered but kind, and something about his bearing said military. "Thank you," Jack said. "Marcus Wells, retired Army, 75th Ranger Regiment. I heard about what you've been doing, wanted to meet you." Wells extended a hand. Jack shook it, noting the firm grip. "Ranger Regiment? Which years?" "Desert Storm through early 2000s. You?" "Special Forces, 2009 through 2019, mostly Afghanistan, one tour in Iraq." Wells nodded slowly. "Different wars, same job. I was a medic too back in the day. Never got the fancy training you young guys got, but I learned enough to keep my buddies alive." He paused. "You know what the hardest part was for me? Coming home. Trying to be normal when I'd spent years being anything but." "Yeah," Jack said quietly. "I know that feeling. Took me 10 years to figure out I didn't have to choose between the two. Between being a soldier and being civilian. Between using my skills and having a family. I could do both, just differently." Wells gestured back at the building. "What you're doing here, teaching cops to save lives, that's finding you're different. That's taking what the military made you and giving it a new purpose." "It's complicated," Jack admitted. "I have a daughter, she's already lost her mother. I can't risk her losing me too. So don't. Teach from the sidelines, train people, share what you know without putting yourself in the line of fire." Wells smiled. "The war taught us how to kill and how to heal. We get to choose which one we keep doing in peacetime. You're choosing the right one." "It doesn't always feel right." "That's because it's still new. Give it time." Wells clapped him on the shoulder. "You're doing good work, son. Don't let anyone, including yourself, convince you otherwise." As Wells walked away, Jack felt some of the tension in his chest ease. Maybe this was okay. Maybe finding a middle path between his past and his present wasn't compromise. It was growth, evolution, becoming something more than he'd been without losing what made him valuable. He returned to the ceremony to find Ella and Margaret had arrived. Stone must have told them when to come. Ella ran to him, dress swirling, eyes bright. "Daddy, Captain Stone showed us your medal. It's so shiny." Jack picked her up, even though she was getting too big for it. "What are you doing here, sweetheart? This is boring adult stuff." Grammy said we should see you get recognized, that it was important. Ella wrapped her arms around his neck. I'm proud of you, Daddy. You help people. Over her shoulder, Jack saw Margaret watching them, a complex expression on her face, grief and pride and something like peace. She'd lost her daughter but gained a son-in-law who honored Rebecca's memory not with revenge but with service. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of conversations and congratulations. Officers wanted to share stories about the training, about situations where Jack's techniques had helped them. A young cop named Williams pulled him aside and showed him a photo of his newborn daughter. I responded to a car accident last week, Williams said. Driver was trapped, bleeding from a head wound. I used your techniques, pressure points, wound packing, kept him stable until the ambulance arrived. Doctor said I saved his life, Shem. He looked at the baby photo. That man gets to meet his daughter now because of what you taught me. So thank you. Really. Jack accepted the thanks, but inside he was thinking, I didn't save that man. Williams did. I just gave him the tools. The courage was his own. Late in the evening, after most people had left, Jack stood with Stone and Sarah in the nearly empty conference room. That went well, Stone said. The officers really respect you, Jack. They respect results. Thompson saving Chen, Williams saving that driver, that's what matters.
Sarah smiled. You're never going to be comfortable with praise, are you? Not particularly.
Well, get used to it. You're going to be hearing a lot more of it. Stone pulled out a folder. I've been contacted by 6 different departments wanting your training. 2 hospitals. The FBI field office. Hell, even the fire department wants to talk to you about tactical emergency medicine. Jack felt the walls closing in. That's too much, Captain. I told you. I know what you told me. And I'm not saying you have to accept every request, but you need to understand the impact you're having. The curriculum you developed isn't just helping individual officers. It's changing how departments think about tactical medicine. It's saving lives in ways we won't even know about for years. Stone's right, Sarah added. What you're doing matters, Jack. Really matters. Jack looked at his medal on the wall, at Rebecca's name beside it. He thought about Ella at home, about the life he'd built, about the balance he was trying to maintain. I'll do what I can, but on my terms. Short courses, limited engagement, always with the option to walk away if it becomes too much. That's all anyone can ask, Stone said. The drive home was quiet. Ella had fallen asleep in the back seat, and Margaret dozed in the passenger seat. Jack drove through the darkness, thinking about paths chosen and unchosen, about the way life kept pulling you back to certain things no matter how far you tried to run. He tried to leave the warrior life behind, had succeeded for 6 years. But maybe Wells was right. Maybe it wasn't about leaving it behind, it was about transforming it, finding new ways to use old skills, becoming a different kind of soldier in a different kind of war. A war against ignorance and unpreparedness, and the terrible waste of preventable death. When they arrived home, Jack carried Ella to bed without waking her. He stood in her doorway for a long moment, watching her sleep, making a silent promise. Whatever else he did, wherever else his skills took him, she would always be first, always be safe, always be loved. In his office, Jack pulled up his training calendar. He'd committed to the Riverside Police Department starting next week. After that, there was a hospital in the city that wanted a 2-day intensive for their emergency room staff. Then another police department, smaller, rural, desperate for help. He could do this, could train and teach and share what he knew while still being Ella's father, while still having a life outside the war. It would take discipline, boundaries, constant balancing. But it was possible. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Mr. Rowan, my name is Jennifer Santos. My husband was the dirty cop you helped catch. I wanted to say thank you. He destroyed our family, but he destroyed other families too. What you did, helping stop the Vega cartel, it means justice for a lot of people, including my kids who deserve better than a father like that. Thank you for being one of the good ones. Jack stared at the message for a long time. He'd never thought about Santos having a family, having people who'd be hurt by his betrayal. But of course he did. Evil didn't just affect its direct victims, it rippled outward, touching everyone in its path. And good could ripple outward too. Every officer he trained might save a life. Every life saved affected families, communities, futures that wouldn't exist without that intervention. The math was impossible to calculate, but the principle was clear. Small actions, repeated consistently, created large changes. Jack typed back, "Thank you for reaching out. I hope you and your kids find peace. You deserve better." He set down the phone and opened Rebecca's journal one more time, flipping to the last entry she'd made, written the morning of the day she died. "Ella asked me this morning why I'm a police officer. She said her friend's mom works in an office and comes home every day at 5 o'clock, and why can't I do that? I told her some jobs are about making money, and some jobs are about making a difference. I told her that when bad people hurt good people, someone has to stop them, and I choose to be someone who stops them. She said, 'But what if the bad people hurt you?' I told her I'm very careful. I told her I have the best training and the best partners. I told her I always come home. I didn't tell her that last part might be a lie, that the Vega investigation is getting dangerous, that I might not always come home. But I will tell Jack tonight that if something happens to me, he needs to know it was worth it, that protecting people, stopping evil, making the world safer for our daughter, that's worth the risk. That's worth everything. I love him so much, love Ella so much, love this life we've built. But I love the job too, love knowing I make a difference. I just hope I'm good enough to do both. To be a cop and a mother, a warrior and a wife. I hope." The entry ended there, unfinished. Hours later, she'd been ambushed and killed. Jack closed the journal with tears on his face. She'd tried to do both, had paid the ultimate price, but she'd also lived fully, had made a real difference, had died doing work that mattered. He wouldn't make her mistake, wouldn't put himself in unnecessary danger, wouldn't risk leaving Ella the way Rebecca had. But he also wouldn't waste the skills he'd earned in blood and fire, wouldn't ignore the calls for help when he could answer them, wouldn't let Rebecca's death or her life be for nothing. On his computer, Jack created a new document, Rowan Training Protocols, Long-Term Implementation Strategy. He started outlining not just individual courses, but a complete system, training for trainers, self-sustaining programs that departments could maintain without him, certification standards that would ensure quality across multiple jurisdictions. He worked through the night, driven by purpose and memory and the knowledge that he'd finally found his path forward. Not the path he'd planned, not the path he'd expected, but a path that honored who he'd been, who Rebecca had been, and who he needed to become for Ella. As dawn broke, Jack saved the document and walked to Ella's room. She was stirring, almost awake. He sat on the edge of her bed and waited. Her eyes opened. "Daddy?" "Morning, sweetheart. You're up early." "Couldn't sleep. Was thinking about things." "What things?" Jack smiled. "About how you were right. About how everyone has gifts and it's important to share them. About how maybe I can be your dad and still help other people." Ella sat up, immediately awake. "Does that mean you're going to keep teaching?" "Yeah, I think I am. But in a way that means I'm still here for you, still home most of the time. Does that sound okay?" She threw her arms around him. "That sounds perfect." And maybe, Jack thought, holding his daughter as morning light filled the room. Maybe it was. 1 year. That's how long it had been since Jack pulled Sarah Miles from a burning wreck on Highway 47. 1 year since he'd walked back into the world he'd tried to leave behind. 1 year since everything changed. Jack stood in the parking lot of his new building, a modest 2-story structure on the edge of Cedar Ridge that he'd purchased 3 months ago. The sign above the door read Rowan First Response Training in simple black letters. Nothing fancy, nothing flashy, just a statement of purpose. Inside, the main floor had been converted into a training facility, practice dummies, medical equipment, a small classroom area with whiteboards and projectors. The second floor was office space where Jack handled the administrative side of things he'd never imagined running. A business. His business. Teaching people to save lives. It wasn't what he'd planned. But then, the best things rarely were. His phone buzzed, a text from Sarah. Running 5 minutes late, traffic. She was coming up for a visit, the first time she'd been to Cedar Ridge since the Vega operation. They'd stayed in touch over the year. Occasional texts, a few phone calls, the kind of connection that forms between people who've shared life and death moments. She'd been promoted to detective, was leading the ongoing investigation into what remained of the Vega network. Turned out, taking down the brothers was just the beginning. But that was her fight now, not his. Jack walked back inside, checking the training room one more time. Everything was ready for Monday's class, 15 paramedics from the county hospital system, all wanting to learn advanced trauma care. After that, a week-long intensive with the SWAT team from upstate. Then a weekend course for civilian first responders. The calendar was full for the next 6 months. It had grown faster than he'd expected. Word of mouth mostly. Departments and hospitals telling each other about the former Special Forces medic who developed a training program that actually worked. Jack had turned down more requests than he'd accepted, maintaining the boundaries he'd set. Nothing that took him away from Ella for more than a week. Nothing that put him in the field. Nothing that crossed the line from teacher to operator. The door opened and Ella bounded in, backpack bouncing, her 11-year-old energy filling the space. Margaret followed at a more sedate pace, carrying grocery bags. "Daddy, can I help set up for Monday's class? Don't you have homework? Did it at Grammy's, please. I want to learn the new dummy setup." Jack smiled. Over the past year, Ella had become increasingly interested in his work. She'd learned basic first aid, could recite the steps for CPR, knew the difference between arterial and venous bleeding. It worried him sometimes. She was too young to be thinking about trauma and death. But she approached it with the same curiosity she brought to everything else, and he couldn't deny the pride he felt watching her learn. "Okay, but just for an hour. Then dinner." Margaret set the groceries down, watching them with that expression Jack had learned to read. Pride mixed with melancholy. Ella reminded her so much of Rebecca, the same quick mind, the same determination. But there was Jack in her too, the calm under pressure, the quiet strength. "I'll start dinner," Margaret said. "You two play with your medical equipment." She said it teasingly, but Jack knew what she meant. This was healing for all of them. The training center wasn't just a business. It was a memorial, a continuation of Rebecca's work in a different form. Every life Jack's students saved was a life Rebecca had saved too, in a way. Her investigation, her sacrifice, had led to the Vega takedown, which had led to Jack's involvement, which had led to this. Everything connected. Everything mattered. 20 minutes later, Sarah's car pulled into the parking lot. Jack watched through the window as she got out, moving with the easy confidence of someone who'd fully recovered from her injuries. She wore jeans and a casual jacket, her detective's badge visible on her belt. Some things never changed. Ella saw her and ran to the door. "Sarah!" They'd met several times over the past year, and Ella had taken to Sarah immediately. Maybe it was the uniform, the connection to Rebecca. Or maybe it was just that Sarah treated Ella like a person, not a child to be talked down to. "Hey kiddo, you've grown like 6 inches since I last saw you." 4 inches, Ella corrected. "Daddy measures me on the wall at home. Want to see the new training setup?" "Absolutely." Papa Jack joined them as Ella led Sarah through the facility, explaining everything with the enthusiasm of a born teacher. "This is where we practice tourniquets, and this is the wound packing station. You have to get the gauze really deep in the dummy to stop the bleeding. And this section is for chest seals and airways and all the breathing stuff." Sarah listened attentively, asking questions, genuinely interested. When Ella ran off to help Margaret with dinner, Sarah turned to Jack with raised eyebrows. "She's something else. Rebecca would be so proud." "Yeah." Jack felt the familiar ache that came with Rebecca's name. It was softer now, after a year, but still there. Still real. "She wants to be a paramedic when she grows up, or maybe a doctor. Changes every week. Whatever she becomes, she'll be good at it. She's got the right instincts." Sarah walked slowly through the training room, taking it all in. "This is impressive, Jack. Really impressive. You've built something important here. It's needed, that's all. It's more than needed, it's transformative." She stopped in front of a wall where Jack had mounted photos, officers and paramedics and first responders who'd used his training to save lives in the field. There were dozens of them now, each with a small card describing the incident. "This is your legacy. Every one of these people is alive because you taught someone what to do." Jack looked at the wall, feeling the weight of it. "They're alive because someone made the choice to help. I just provided the tools." "Always so humble," Sarah smiled. "You know the whole department still talks about you, right?
about the Vega operation, the training, everything. You changed how we think about tactical medicine. How's the investigation going? You getting the rest of them? Sarah's expression hardened slightly. We're making progress. The Vega brothers are cooperating, trying to reduce their sentences. We've rolled up most of their distribution network, arrested another 30 people in the last 6 months, but it's like pulling weeds. You get some, more grow back. That's the nature of it. I know, but we're making a difference. That's what matters. She pulled out her phone, showed him a photo of a young woman in a graduation gown. Recognize her? Jack studied the photo. Something familiar in the eyes, the smile. Then it clicked. Chen. Officer Chen. Yep. She decided to go back to school, become a nurse. Says surviving that heart attack made her realize she wanted to save lives, not just enforce laws. She starts her nursing program next month. That's good. Really good. She wanted me to tell you thank you. Said if you and Thompson hadn't known what to do, she wouldn't be here to make this choice. They were interrupted by Margaret calling them for dinner. The meal was relaxed, comfortable. Ella chattering about school and friends, Margaret asking Sarah about her work, Jack content to listen and eat. This was what family felt like, he realized. Not just blood relations, but people who'd been through fire together and came out the other side. After dinner, after Ella went to do her reading homework, the 3 adults sat on the back deck watching the sun set over the pine forest. Margaret excused herself after a while, leaving Jack and Sarah alone with their coffee. There's another reason I came up here, Sarah said after a long silence. Something I wanted to tell you in person. Jack waited, sensing the weight behind her words. They caught him. The man who actually pulled the trigger on Rebecca. His name is Victor Ruiz, former Vega enforcer. He fled to Mexico after the hit, but the federales picked him up 3 weeks ago on unrelated charges. Once they identified him, we extradited him. He's in custody now, facing murder charges. Jack's hands tightened on his coffee mug. For 6 years, he'd lived with the knowledge that his wife's killers were out there, unpunished. The Vega brothers had ordered the hit, and they were in prison now, but the actual shooter had remained a ghost, a name without a face. Until now. When's the trial? His voice was steady, but Sarah knew him well enough to hear what lay beneath. 6 months, probably. The evidence is solid. Miguel Vega gave us everything, confirmed Ruiz was the shooter. Plus we have ballistics, witness statements, the whole package. He's going away for life, Jack. No deals, no parole. Jack was quiet for a long time, processing. He'd imagined this moment countless times over the years. The moment they'd catch Rebecca's killer, the moment justice would finally be served. He'd thought he'd feel rage, or satisfaction, or closure. Instead, he felt something more complex. Sadness mixed with relief, grief mixed with acceptance. Thank you for telling me. Thank you for... Do you want to be there for the trial? Did he? Jack thought about sitting in a courtroom, watching the man who'd killed Rebecca. Thought about Ella, about what it would mean to dive back into that pain. Thought about the life he'd built, the peace he'd found. No, he said finally. I trust you to make sure justice is done. I don't need to be there for that. Sarah looked surprised. You're sure? This is the man who took Rebecca from you, from Ella. I know who he is, but sitting in a courtroom watching his trial won't bring her back. Won't change anything. Jack met her eyes. Rebecca's been gone for 6 years. I've spent this last year honoring her memory by doing work that matters, by teaching people to save lives the way she tried to save lives. That's my closure, not revenge, not watching some killer get sentenced. You've come a long way, Sarah said softly. When I first met you, when you pulled me from that car, you were still running from your past. Now, you've made peace with it. I don't know about peace, but acceptance maybe. Understanding that I can't change what happened can only change what happens next. He gestured toward the training center. This is what happens next, teaching, helping, making sure other cops and medics have the skills they need, making sure fewer families have to feel what Ella and I felt. They sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell and stars emerged. Eventually, Sarah stood to leave. You should know, she said. The department wants to do something for the anniversary of the night you saved me. A small ceremony, maybe a plaque. Would you be okay with that? Jack thought about it. A year ago, he would have refused immediately, wanting to stay invisible,
wanting to avoid the attention. Now, after a year of teaching and training and watching his students save lives, he understood that sometimes the attention mattered, not for ego, but for inspiration, for showing others what was possible. Okay, but keep it small, and make sure it's about the officers who've used the training, not me. They're the real heroes. Deal. Sarah hugged him goodbye. Take care of yourself, Jack, and that amazing kid of yours. You too, Sarah. Stay safe out there. After she left, Jack walked through the training center one more time, checking equipment, planning Monday's class. His phone buzzed with a text from Danny Reeves. Hey, Jack. Wanted to let you know. I'm officially certified as a tactical medic now, teaching my own classes starting next month. Couldn't have done it without your training. Thank you for giving me a second chance. Jack smiled and typed back. Proud of you. Pass it on. That's how we honor the ones we lost. Another text, this one from Captain Stone. 3 more departments requesting your training curriculum. I'm sending them your way. Hope you're ready for this to keep growing. And another from Officer Williams. Baby's first birthday today. The man I saved in that car accident came to the party. Wanted to meet the family of the cop who gave him more time with his own family. Thought you'd want to know your training is still making a difference. Jack read through the messages, feeling the weight and wonder of it. One decision, to stop on a rainy highway, had led to all of this. Had led to the Vega takedown, to the training program, to dozens of lives saved by officers who knew what to do because he'd taught them. Butterfly effect. That's what they called it. Small actions creating large consequences. Margaret appeared in the doorway. Ella's asking for you. Wants you to read with her before bed. I'll be right there. But he stood there a moment longer, looking at the wall of saved lives, thinking about paths taken and untaken, about Rebecca's sacrifice and Sarah's survival and his own journey from soldier to father to teacher. Thinking about how sometimes the worst nights of your life led to the best work of your life. His phone rang. Unknown number. Jack almost ignored it, then decided to answer. Mr. Rowan? My name is Dr. Patricia Chen. I'm Officer Chen's mother. I hope it's okay that I'm calling. The police gave me your number. Of course. How can I help you, Dr. Chen? I wanted to thank you. My daughter tells me you're the reason she survived her heart attack, that you recognized what was happening and got her help in time. Her voice was thick with emotion. She's my only child, Mr. Rowan. If she'd died, I don't know what I would have done. But she's here, she's healthy, she's pursuing her dreams because you taught someone what to do. I needed you to know what that means to our family. Jack felt his own throat tighten. I'm glad she's okay. She's a good officer. She'll make a great nurse. She says you lost your wife, that you understand what it's like to lose someone. I'm so sorry for your loss, Mr. Rowan, but I want you to know that from my family's tragedy averted comes profound gratitude. You gave me more time with my daughter. That's a gift I can never repay. After they hung up, Jack stood in the darkness of his training center, letting the tears come. Happy tears, sad tears, grateful tears. All of it mixed together in the complex emotional calculus of a life lived in service to others. He thought about Rebecca, about the journal entry where she'd written about making a difference, about choosing to be someone who stopped bad people from hurting good people. She'd paid the ultimate price for that choice. But her death had led to the investigation that took down the Vega cartel. Her sacrifice had meaning, had purpose, had ripple effects that continued to spread. And now Jack was creating his own ripples. Every officer trained, every life saved, every person like Officer Chen who got a second chance, those were ripples spreading outward, touching families and communities in ways he'd never fully know. Upstairs, Ella was waiting. Jack climbed the steps to their living quarters, a small apartment he'd built above the training center so he could work and live in the same place, never be far from Ella. She was in her room, already in pajamas, book open on her lap. You took forever, she said, but she was smiling. Sorry, sweetheart, lots of phone calls. He sat on the edge of her bed. What are we reading? Actually, I wanted to ask you something first. She closed the book, her expression serious. Sarah told me about the man who hurt Mommy, that they caught him. Jack's chest tightened. He should have known Sarah would mention it. Yeah, they did. Are you sad? A little, but mostly I'm glad. Glad that he can't hurt anyone else. Ella was quiet for a moment, then said, I don't remember Mommy very much anymore. I remember feelings, I remember feeling safe with her, and I remember her singing, but I don't remember her face unless I look at pictures. Is that bad? No, baby, that's not bad. You were very young when she died. It's natural to forget details. But you remember her. Every day. Does it still hurt? Jack thought about how to answer that. It hurts differently now. At first, it was this sharp, terrible pain that was always there. Now it's more like an ache, still there, but softer. And sometimes I can think about her and smile instead of just feeling sad. Do you think she'd be proud of what you're doing with the training center? I think so. I hope so. Ella leaned against him. I'm proud of you, Daddy. You help so many people. You're like a superhero, but real. Jack laughed softly. I'm not a superhero, Ella. I'm just someone who learned some skills and decided to share them. That's what superheroes do. They use their powers to help people. She picked up her book again. Can we read now? I want to know what happens next. They read together for half an hour, Ella following along as Jack worked through the chapter. When her eyes started drooping, he marked their place and turned off the lamp. Daddy? Her voice was sleepy. When I'm older, can I work with you? Help teach people? If that's what you want, but you've got plenty of time to decide what you want to be. I know, but I think I want to help people, like you and Mommy. Then I'll teach you everything I know. After she fell asleep, Jack went back downstairs to his office. He pulled out Rebecca's journal one last time, opened it to that final incomplete entry. He'd read it so many times over the past year that he had it memorized, but holding the actual book felt important tonight. I just hope I'm good enough to do both. To be a cop and a mother. A warrior and a wife. I hope. Jack picked up a pen and in his own handwriting below Rebecca's words, completed the thought. That our daughter grows up strong and safe and loved. That my work makes a difference. That if something happens to me, Jack will be okay. That Ella will be okay. That our family will find a way forward even if I'm not there to see it. You were good enough, Rebecca. More than good enough. You were exactly who you needed to be. And we're okay. Ella is thriving. I'm doing work that matters. We're healing. I finished what you started. The Vega cartel is gone. Your killer is in custody. Officers you never met are alive because of the investigation you started and the training it inspired me to create. Every life I helped save is a life you helped save too. Every officer who goes home to their family is a gift you gave, even though you didn't get to go home to yours. I'm not angry anymore. Not lost anymore. I've found purpose again. Found a way to be both the father Ella needs and the teacher others need. I think you'd be proud of us. I hope you can see what we've built from the ashes of losing you. Rest easy, love. Your family is okay. Your legacy lives on. And I promise, I'll keep watching over Ella. Keep teaching people to save lives. Keep honoring what you stood for. Until we meet again. Jack closed the journal and placed it back in its drawer. He wouldn't need to open it again. The words were part of him now, woven into who he'd become. His phone showed one last message, this one from Margaret. Thank you for including me in this journey. Rebecca would be so proud of the man you've become and the father you are. See you Monday for dinner. I'm bringing Ella's favorite, lasagna. Monday morning arrived bright and clear. Jack was at the training center early, setting up for the paramedic course. 15 students arrived promptly at 8, eager and nervous. Jack recognized the look. He'd seen it in every class he'd taught. The mixture of anticipation and doubt, the question of whether they were really capable of learning these advanced skills. By the end of day 1, the doubt was gone. Jack took them through the fundamentals with patience and precision, showing them not just what to do, but why, building their understanding from the ground up. He told them stories from his combat experience, from the officers he'd trained, from real situations where these skills had made the difference between life and death. On day 3, a young paramedic named Gomez asked the question someone asked in every class. Mr. Rowan, do you ever regret it? Teaching us this stuff, reliving all those combat memories, dealing with the stress of it. Jack looked around the room at the 15 faces watching him, people who dedicated their lives to helping others, who wanted to be better at it, who were willing to put in the hard work to learn. No, he
he said simply. This is the best work I've ever done. Because in combat, I was fighting to keep people alive in the middle of chaos and violence. Here, I'm preventing that chaos from claiming lives. I'm giving you the tools to create order from disorder, to bring people back from the edge. That's not a burden, that's a privilege. The course ended on Friday with a comprehensive practical exam. All 15 students passed. As they filed out, collecting their certificates, shaking Jack's hand, thanking him for the training, he felt that familiar sense of satisfaction. 15 more people who could save lives. 15 more sets of hands that wouldn't freeze when someone was bleeding out. The ripples continued to spread. That evening, Jack took Ella to their favorite spot, a clearing in the forest about a mile from the house where you could see the entire valley spread out below. They'd been coming here since they moved to Cedar Ridge, using it as a place to think, to talk, to just be together. They sat on the fallen log that served as their bench, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Big week? Ella asked. Good week. Trained 15 paramedics. All of them did great. So 15 more people who can help save lives. Exactly. Ella was quiet for a moment, then said, Daddy, do you think Mommy can see us, like from heaven or wherever? Jack wasn't particularly religious, had seen too much death to have simple answers about the afterlife, but he knew what Ella needed to hear, and it was also what he chose to believe. I think she can. I think she's proud of us. I talk to her sometimes, in my head. Tell her about school and stuff. Is that weird? Not at all. I talk to her too sometimes. What do you tell her? Jack thought about it. I tell her about you. About how smart you are, how kind you are, how you're growing into this amazing person. I tell her about the training center, about the lives we're helping save. I tell her that we're okay, that we miss her, but we're okay. Do you think she answers? Not in words, but sometimes I feel her presence, like she's telling me I'm on the right path, doing the right thing. Especially when I'm teaching, when I see someone learn something that might save a life someday. In those moments, I feel her with me. Ella leaned her head against his shoulder. I'm glad you're my dad. I'm glad you didn't give up after Mommy died. I'm glad you're helping people. I'm glad you're my daughter. You're my whole world, Ella. Everything I do is for you. I know, but it's okay if it's for other people too. You're allowed to have a bigger purpose. Such wisdom from someone so young. Jack pulled her close, grateful beyond words for this small human who'd given him a reason to keep going when everything fell apart, who'd accepted his return to teaching and training with maturity beyond her years, who understood that helping others didn't mean loving her any less. They sat there until the stars emerged, father and daughter, connected by love and loss, and the resilient hope that tomorrow could be better than yesterday. 6 months later, Jack stood at the back of a courtroom as Victor Ruiz was sentenced to life in prison without parole for the murder of Officer Rebecca Rowan. He'd ultimately decided to come, not for himself, but for Rebecca. Someone from her family should be there to see justice served. Sarah sat beside him, and Margaret was on his other side. Ella was at school. Jack had decided she didn't need to be part of this, didn't need to see her mother's killer or hear the details of how she died. Some things children should be spared. The judge's words were clear and firm. Mr. Ruiz, you took a dedicated public servant from her family, from her community, from a world that needed her. You will spend the rest of your natural life paying for that crime. May you find, in the decades ahead, some measure of remorse for what you've done. Ruiz showed no emotion as he was led away in chains. Jack felt no satisfaction in watching him go, no sense of victory. Just a quiet acknowledgement that this chapter was finally, fully closed. Outside the courthouse, reporters crowded around wanting statements. Sarah handled them with practiced ease, giving quotes about justice and closure and moving forward. Jack slipped away with Margaret, avoiding the cameras. How do you feel? Margaret asked as they walked to the car. Relieved, like I can fully let go now. Good. That's good. She squeezed his arm. Rebecca can rest easy. Her killer is behind bars, her investigation brought down a cartel, her husband is doing important work, and her daughter is thriving. That's a legacy to be proud of. That evening, the anniversary ceremony took place at police headquarters. True to Jack's request, it was small,
just the department and a few key people. But what started small grew in significance as officer after officer stood up to share their story. How the training had saved a life. How they'd used Jack's techniques in the field. How they'd felt confident instead of helpless when crisis struck. Danny Reeves, now a certified tactical medic running his own training programs, spoke about Martinez and redemption and second chances. Officer Thompson talked about saving Officer Chen and how that moment had changed his entire career. Sarah described the night Jack pulled her from that burning car and how everything that came after, the investigation, the raids, the lives saved, traced back to that one decision to stop and help. Captain Stone presented Jack with a plaque, but the real gift was the video that followed. Testimonials from people Jack had never met, family members of officers who'd been saved, civilians helped by his students, departments whose casualty rates had dropped after implementing his training protocols. Face after face, story after story, life after life. By the end, Jack was fighting tears. He'd known his work mattered, but seeing the scope of it, hearing the human stories behind the statistics, it was overwhelming in the best way. When they asked him to speak, he kept it brief. A year ago, I pulled Officer Miles from a wrecked car. I didn't do it for recognition or gratitude. I did it because someone needed help and I could provide it. That's what all of you do, every day. You see people in need and you help them, regardless of the risk to yourselves. I'm honored to play a small part in making sure you have the skills to help effectively, to save lives, instead of just witnessing death. Thank you for letting me be part of this community, this brotherhood and sisterhood of people who run toward danger instead of away from it. Rebecca would be proud of all of you. I know I am. The ceremony ended with the unveiling of a permanent display in the headquarters lobby, a shadow box containing Jack's Silver Star, photos from the Vega operation, and a bronze plaque that read, "In honor of Jack Rowan and all those who teach others to save lives." May we never forget that the highest form of service is preparing others to serve. Driving home that night, Jack felt a sense of completion he hadn't known he needed. The year had been full, challenging, rewarding, exhausting, inspiring. He'd found his way back to purpose without losing his way as a father, had honored Rebecca's memory without being consumed by it, had helped countless people while keeping his own family intact. Ella was still awake when he got home, sitting at the kitchen table with Margaret, working on a project. "How was it?" she asked, looking up. "Good, really good." Jack joined them at the table. "What are you working on?" "Social studies project. We have to write about someone who inspires us." She showed him the paper, the header reading, "My Dad, a Quiet Hero." Jack's heart swelled. "Ella, you don't have to." "I want to. You inspire me, Daddy. You help people. You teach them to be brave and skilled and ready. You took something terrible, losing Mommy, and turned it into something good. That's inspiring." He read through what she'd written, a clear-eyed, mature assessment of his journey from soldier to widower to teacher, written with love, but also honesty. She didn't shy away from the hard parts, from the grief or the struggle, but she also celebrated the growth, the purpose found, the lives changed. "This is beautiful, sweetheart. It's true." "That's better than beautiful." After Margaret left and Ella went to bed, Jack sat in his office one final time, looking at the year behind him and the years ahead. His calendar was full. His purpose was clear. His daughter was healthy and happy. The ghosts of his past had been laid to rest, transformed from haunting memories into driving inspiration. He opened his laptop and started a new document. Not a training protocol this time, but something different. A letter to Ella, to be given to her when she was older, when she could fully understand. Dear Ella, by the time you read this, you'll be old enough to understand things I can't explain to you now. About the night your mother died. About the years I spent trying to forget who I'd been. About the night I stopped on a highway and everything changed. I want you to know that your mother was one of the bravest people I've ever known. She chose to face evil so that good people could be safe. She paid the ultimate price for that choice, but she did it willingly, knowing the risks. She did it because it mattered, because some things are worth fighting for. When she died, I wanted to quit. Wanted to hide from the world, protect you from everything dangerous, live small and safe. But life doesn't work that way. Danger finds you whether you're looking for it or not. The question is whether you're prepared to face it. The night I pulled Sarah Miles from that burning car, I made a choice. Not to hide anymore. Not to waste the skills I'd learned. Not to let your mother's sacrifice be meaningless. I chose to fight back against senseless death in the only way I knew how, by teaching others to preserve life. That choice led to this training center, to the hundreds of people I've taught, to the lives they've saved and will continue to save. It led to justice for your mother. It led to purpose for me. It led to you growing up with a father who's present and engaged and doing meaningful work. I'm writing this on the first anniversary of that choice, looking back on a year that transformed everything. I wanted you to have these words for when you're older, when you're facing your own choices about who to be and what to do with your gifts. Here's what I've learned. Running from your past doesn't work. You can't hide from who you are, from what you've experienced, from the skills you've developed. But you can transform those things, can take what war taught you and use it to preserve peace, can take pain and turn it into purpose, can take loss and transform it into legacy. Your mother taught me that some things are worth fighting for. Sarah taught me that stopping to help matters. You've taught me that being a good father means being someone you can be proud of, not just someone who keeps you safe, but someone who makes the world safer for everyone. Whatever you choose to do with your life, remember this. You have gifts, skills, strengths. Don't waste them. Don't hide from them. Use them to make a difference, however that looks for you. Be brave enough to stop when someone needs help. Be strong enough to transform your pain into purpose. Be wise enough to know that the best life is one lived in service to others. I love you more than anything in this world. You are my reason for everything, but you're also my inspiration, your courage, your wisdom, your kind heart. You're going to do amazing things, Ella. I can't wait to see what they are. Love always, Dad. Jack saved the letter and closed the laptop. Outside, the night was clear and still, stars brilliant overhead. Somewhere out there, officers were on patrol, paramedics were responding to calls, first responders were facing crisis situations, and some of them, maybe many of them, had the skills they needed because Jack had taught them, because he'd stopped on that highway, because he'd chosen purpose over safety, engagement over hiding. His phone buzzed one last time, a text from a number he didn't recognize with a photo attached. The photo showed a young man in a hospital bed, smiling, surrounded by family. The message read, "Mr. Rowan, you don't know me, but I'm the man Officer Williams saved last year using your training. I just became a grandfather. Wanted you to know that I'm here to meet my first grandchild because you taught someone what to do. Thank you for giving me more time. Robert Chen." Jack stared at the photo for a long moment, then saved it to the album he kept of all such messages. Another life, another family, another ripple spreading outward from that night on the highway. He walked upstairs to check on Ella one more time. She was fast asleep, peaceful and safe, dreaming whatever dreams 11-year-olds dream. Jack stood in her doorway, watching her breathe, feeling the profound gratitude that comes from knowing you've found your way through the darkness. The black bracelet he'd worn for 6 years, never leave a fallen, no longer hung from his rearview mirror. He'd retired it 6 months ago, had placed it in the shadow box with his silver star and Rebecca's photo. Not because he'd forgotten the promise it represented, but because he'd fulfilled it. Had kept faith with the fallen by honoring their sacrifice, by doing work that mattered, by refusing to let death have the final word. He didn't need a bracelet to remind him anymore. The promise was woven into who he'd become: teacher, healer, father, protector. Someone who stopped when others needed help. Someone who transformed tragedy into training, loss into legacy, grief into growth. Jack walked back to his own room but paused at the window overlooking the training center. The building was dark now, waiting for Monday's class, for the next group of students, for the next lives that would be changed and saved. His life's work, contained in that simple structure. No, not contained, spreading outward from it, carried by every student who walked through those doors and took Jack's teachings into the world. Carried by Officer Thompson and Danny Reeves and all the others who were now teaching their own students. Carried by the families who didn't lose loved ones because someone knew what to do. Carried forward into a future Jack would never fully see, but had helped create. He thought about Rebecca, about the woman who'd chosen courage over safety and paid the ultimate price, about Sarah, who'd survived against the odds, about Ella, growing up strong and wise and kind, about Margaret, who'd lost her daughter but gained a son-in-law dedicated to honoring that loss, about the web of connections, the network of lives touching lives, all because of choices made in crucial moments. Everything connected, everything mattered, every decision to stop, to help, to teach, to love, all of it rippling outward in ways you could never fully calculate or comprehend. Jack Rowan had been a soldier, a medic, a husband, a widower, a father, and now a teacher. But more than any label, he was simply someone who'd learned that the purpose of survival was to help others survive, that the gift of skills was the obligation to share them, that the aftermath of loss was the opportunity for meaning. He'd started that rainy night 1 year ago as a man trying to hide from his past. He'd become someone who'd transformed that past into purpose, who'd found a way to be both the father Ella needed and the teacher the world needed. And in doing that, he'd discovered something profound. You don't have to choose between taking care of your family and taking care of the world. Sometimes the best way to protect the people you love is to make the world around them safer for everyone. Jack climbed into bed, exhausted but content, and let sleep take him. His dreams were peaceful for the first time in years. No nightmares of combat or loss, just quiet images of the training center, of students learning, of lives being saved in emergency rooms and patrol cars and accident scenes across the country. In the morning, he'd wake up and start again. More classes to teach, more students to train, more lives to impact in ways both seen and unseen. The work would continue, the ripples would spread, the legacy would grow. But tonight, Jack Rowan slept the sleep of a man who'd found his way home, not to a place, but to a purpose, who'd discovered that the highest form of service wasn't fighting or teaching or saving lives, but simply being present when you were needed and prepared when the moment came. He'd kept his promise. He'd never left the fallen behind. He'd honored Rebecca's sacrifice by refusing to let death win, by choosing life and purpose and meaning over grief and hiding and fear. And in doing so, he'd found something he never expected: peace. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of purpose strong enough to transform that pain into something beautiful. The stars wheeled overhead, indifferent and eternal. Below them, in a small house in Cedar Ridge, a father slept beside his daughter's room, both of them safe, both of them loved, both of them part of a story that was larger than themselves, a story of courage and sacrifice, and the unbreakable human capacity to find light in darkness. The story of a single dad who found a dying cop and in saving her life, saved his own. The story of a warrior who became a teacher. The story of a man who learned that the greatest strength isn't the ability to fight, but the wisdom to know when to fight, when to teach, when to heal, and when to simply be present for the people who need you most. And in the end, that was enough. That was everything.